Welcome to Anime T23, where we explore alternate realities and dive deep into the untold fanfiction of your favorite anime characters. In today's video, we're diving into a question that changes everything about Naruto Uzumaki's life. What if Naruto had been neglected by his family, a boy who was destined to be the protector of the village, but instead grew up forgotten and shunned, left to face the world alone? The pain of abandonment, a life without the love of parents or the support of friends. What would this isolation do to a child like Naruto? Would it break him, or would it awaken something far darker? When there's no one to guide him, when the world turns its back on him, Naruto finds an ancient power within himself, the legendary with style, a power long thought to be lost, one that could change the balance of the entire ninja world. But how will this dark gift shape his journey? Join us as we explore this what-if scenario and watch as Naruto's life takes a shocking turn. Will his loneliness lead him down a path of destruction, or will he rise as a new force to be reckoned with? Hit that like button, subscribe to Anime T23, and don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a moment of these epic what-if scenarios. Now, let's dive into part 3 of What If Naruto Was Neglected by His Family and Released with Style. Enjoy the journey. Truths and lies, the small smile on Naruto's face disappears as he notes his own confusion at his reaction to seeing his female teammate. He steps through the door after removing his shoes as Satsuki stands aside to let him in, her brother still on his back. He walks into the household, looking around and observing the grand and regal interior design of the household, matching its exterior architecture, which stands out even amongst the rest of the compound's impressive construction as well. He looks on in concealed awe. The Hokage's compound was itself impressive, and a sheer display of opulence and wealth, but even it didn't match this. And Naruto, having spent the vast majority of his nights since turning 5 years old, sleeping under a tree for shelter, was amazed by a home of such status. Satsuki, who's at the door? The blonde hears a feminine voice call out, accompanied by the sound of footsteps. A dark-haired woman emerges from another room dressed in a dark purple blouse with a red plum skirt and an apron on, and comes to a stop in front of the two, her long, straight black hair forming bangs on either side of her fair-skinned face and roughly framing her cheeks and eyebrows. Naruto, Makoto happily greets, seeing her best friend's eldest child. Evening. Lady Makoto, Naruto responds formally with a bow of the head for the Uchiha matriarch. Makoto looks on taken aback bit, the fact that she hadn't seen Kushina's eldest in years only occurring to her now. Not since. Kushina's other three all referred to her as and Makoto, considering her family because of the close bond she holds with their mother as a sister and because of how she had watched them grow. They had all visited and slept over at the compound many times years ago, but now that she thinks about it, this is Naruto's first time setting foot here since before he was around 5 years old. She had heard the rumors that the boy had packed his belongings and left his family's home, and Fugaku had confirmed them for her, not divulging much else, much to her chagrin. Kushina seems to always be nowhere to find these days for the past few weeks, and so the opportunity to question the redhead about what was going on hasn't presented itself. "I see you're with Sasuke," she says, looking to her son on the blonde boy's back, his clothes dirted and his body sporting a fair amount of bruises. "Is everything okay? What happened?" The smile on her face turning into a look of concern as she walks towards the blonde, carrying her son on his back. "We were training," Naruto responds, "and he took a knock." "Nothing severe, I assure you," Naruto responds plainly, casting a glance at the unconscious boy on his back, before looking back at the boy's mother, now standing in front of him. "Really?" Makoto raises an eyebrow at the blonde's response, looking him up and down. Not a single scratch, bruise, or speck of dirt on the blonde's body indicating combat. Fugaku wasn't exaggerating about his male student's ability. Satsuki looks on at Naruto with an eyebrow of her own raised, not surprised that the blonde had beaten her brother handily, but rather that the two had trained with one another. The eyebrow lowers as she muses about what likely happened. Naruto wouldn't have gone looking for Sasuke or perhaps anyone for that matter. Sasuke must have gone looking for Naruto to fight him because of what he heard from Dad and I. Such would be typical of her twin brother. His desire to get stronger and be the best meant that whenever he came across someone who was stronger than or rivaled him, he would do all in his power to match and surpass them. A result of this mentality had been years of one-upsmanship between him and Menma, and a close friendship, now no longer existent. Herself and Sasuke were once equals, and she even remembers being superior to him at a time, but now it's clear to her that her sibling had surpassed her, even if marginally. As talented as he is, such a fact is as much the result of Sasuke's burning determination and hunger for an increase in strength as it is his natural ability. Perhaps her new eyes will help close the gap, though. Well, all right then, Mikoto says, concern still present in her voice. I'll check on Sasuke in a few moments, but first I need to check on the food. Satsuki, show Naruto to Sasuke's room, the Uchiha woman, says, walking off before turning her head. You'll be joining us for dinner, right? Mikoto asks. Naruto's eyebrows rise for a moment. I'd rather end dash. The blonde is interrupted by the sound of the door behind him opening. He turns to see his Jonin leader walking into the home. He will be joining us. I insist, Fugaku says with a small smile on his face, looking right at the blonde boy. Naruto's mouth opens and then closes, sighing inwardly. If it's Fugaku, then there's no point in arguing. Training Ground 11 Kaori drops down onto her knees, gasping for breath. Logs laying before her in pieces with hard clumps of earth amongst them. Her clothes stick to her body, soaked with sweat. She places her hands to the ground, bent over in order to support herself. She shuts her eyes tight as the sensation of tears stinging them arrives. The blue-haired kunoichi balls her hands into fists, gathering clumps of dirt into her palms. A young girl, about 7 or 8 years of age with black eyes, hair of a light blue color tied into a spiky ponytail, stands still with a look of horror etched across her face as a large white snake slithers up her body, wrapping around her as she shakes like a leaf in the wind. Kaori isn't even able to utter a word as the breath leaves her body and she collapses forward, laying out on the ground with a thud under the starry night sky. Elsewhere in the hidden leaf, the elderly man looks to his left out at the impressive view of the village from atop the restaurant, sitting alone at the table. The fedora hat atop his head and dark glasses obscuring his eyes matching the black suit he has on. His eyes stay glued on the view even as his ears register the sound of footsteps approaching his position. He turns his head to see a sharply dressed young male with brown slick back hair. The male places a silver platter in his right hand onto the table and sits opposite Danzo without a word. Finally, Danzo turns his head to Izadaru, who sits back in his waiter disguise. Mission accomplished, old man, he utters casually while lifting the lid on the silver platter, grabbing a pair of chopsticks, separating them. Danzo watches on as the boy pulls the platter of food he had ordered and begins eating casually. Quite quick, Danzo muses, looking at the boy from behind his dark shades. So Mizuki is dead? Affirmative, Izadaru replies, using one hand to ruffle his own hair, attempting to get it back to its usual spiky look. He can't wait to watch the stupid die out. I see. And you ensured not to leave any trace of distinctive evidence, the old man asks. The boy in response shoots him a deadpan look, showing his feeling of being insulted by the question, before continuing with the meal before him. The old man watching in silence. In his last moments, Izadaru says after a few moments of silence, bar the sound of his eating, he seemed rattled. Talking to himself, seeing things, displaying paranoia. His psychological state clearly wasn't stable. It's possible that the T&I department may have broken him before I got to him. He muses casually, not looking up at the old man, but rather fully focused on his incredibly delicious meal. He'll have to check this place out himself sometime. Perhaps. Perhaps not. That is of no concern to us. He knew nothing of the Foundation and any affiliation or ties we may have had to his master. The client's request was the elimination of Mizuki. That has been done and the payment for our services has been given, he says plainly. Izadaru looks up from his platter, for a moment, an eyebrow raised in curiosity. What had Orochimaru offered, or perhaps rather what had the old man demanded in exchange for this mission as completion? Money? Necessary when running a top-secret organization of military black operatives, but Gramps isn't short on that, and certainly wouldn't waste an opportunity to leverage the snake on just money. He resolves to do mental gymnastics about that later. The point is his work is done. Mizuki's remains won't offer the opportunity for any information to be retrieved either. Hard to retrieve intel from ashes, at least from his knowledge. You understand that this doesn't count as an official mission report, right? Danzo asks, his chin rested upon his interlocked hands, one of which is hidden by a black glove that seems to extend up his sleeve. He watches on as his Zataru places the last bit of food left on the platter in his mouth. I know, he responds, standing up. I'll do that tomorrow. I'm tired, Gramps. See ya, he yells, running toward the edge of the rooftop dining space and jumping off, disguise and all, disappearing in a burst of smoke. Hey! Danzo calls out to the boy in vain as he leaves abruptly. He turns his head back to the platter of food he had ordered, not a shred of it left. He sighs, heavily shaking his head. MHM. There's quite a lot to be desired, but... You're coming along nicely, he says inwardly before turning his head, his shaded eyes once again glued to the grand view of his home. Uchiha compound. A groan escapes the boy's mouth as his eyelids flutter and rise. Sasuke's eyes are met with the white ceiling of his bedroom once again. He turns his head to the left, looking out of his bedroom window and seeing the night sky. How long has he been unconscious? He reaches for his face and touches it, wincing at the pain in his jaw, and taking note that the cuts and bruises all over his body are now concealed by band-aids. He continues staring out of the window at the night sky in thought. The last thing he remembered was a fist rushing at his face in the light of the setting sun. He had been... Naruto, Sasuke says to himself out loud. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze had beaten him, and had done it handily. Sasuke, still laying on his back, balls his fists in a gesture of prideful frustration. He had been thoroughly outmatched. He had landed one measly and ultimately ineffective kick and hadn't landed a scratch on his flesh. He places his hands on either side of himself and pushes himself up into a sitting position, once again wincing in pain, placing a hand to his hurting stomach. How is that guy so strong? Why and how had he hidden such ability for so long? He's not like his brother or sisters. He's different, the Uchiha says inwardly, narrowing his eyes in thought. With Naruto and Fugaku walk side by side, each with his hands in his pockets, the latter having asked to speak with the former in private. Naruto looks around at the compound in eerie silence, hanging over it save for the chirping of crickets. He looks through the windows. The inside of each household they pass dark and silent, staring in thought. You remind me of my son, Fugaku says, breaking the silence between the two, and causing Naruto to turn his head to his sensei, an eyebrow raised in thought. Who does he? Well, technically he was my nephew, but he and his older brother became mine after his father, who was my elder brother, and his mother passed. Fugaku continues, looking at his student. His name was Shursui. Fugaku says, looking up at the sky. Naruto recognizes the name easily. Shursui the Teleporter, one of the most formidable shinobi the Leaf had seen in recent history, touted to be, at the time of his death, the second strongest of the Uchiha clan, second only to the man that walks next to Naruto right now. I suppose he was a bit more of a jokester than you at times, but besides that, you two are pretty alike, he says, turning his head and once again laying his eyes on his student. He figures the best way of allowing the boy to be open and honest with him is opening up himself. Naruto looks at his sensei silently and looks away, not knowing at all what to say. I know about Mizuki. The blonde stops in his tracks at the words. He doesn't panic, looking down at the ground in thought. He'd been silently awaiting this. He hadn't expected Mizuki to tell the truth. He would have thought the embarrassment of the demon brat, taking him down, and perhaps being praised isn't something he would have wanted. And even if the rogue Chunin told the truth if Naruto denied it, he would have hoped there wouldn't be any concrete evidence proving his involvement in the Chunin's arrest. But this is problematic. If Mizuki had told the whole truth, then not coming forward with the knowledge of Orochimaru's involvement in the plot to seize the Forbidden Scroll could and would be interpreted as wrongdoing. I see. Naruto responds after a few moments of silence. He raises his head to look at the Uchiha. So I take it the Hokage knows as well, the blonde questions. He knows what he needs to, including Orochimaru's involvement. But as for who stopped Mizuki, his interrogator unfortunately just couldn't find that out, Fugaku says, a small smile gracing his lips as Naruto's eyebrows rise in surprise. Fugaku walks closer to the boy, standing in front of him. Tell me, Naruto, why didn't you tell your father the truth? Fugaku asks with a feeling that he's getting closer to what he needs to know. Naruto shrugs inwardly, knowing where this is going. He's not giving up any personal information that could be used against him in this case, so he doesn't care. Because I couldn't put it past Lord Hokage and other circles linked to him to assume I was complicit and act on said suspicions. Because I don't trust him, he responds plainly. Fugaku's eyes narrow in thought. It seems to him like the boy doesn't trust anyone, not even the comrades he fights alongside. Nevertheless, he continues to dig. Why don't you trust your father? The Jonin asks. The blonde responds with Menma, the red and black-haired boy skids and rolls before jumping to his feet in a display of agility. The last 7 clones rush toward him at once. He runs towards them as well. He lowers his head, dodging a kick from one, sweeping its other leg out from beneath it and punching it. As it explodes into a cloud of smoke, the other 6 rush and pounce on him, dog piling onto him. Beneath the pile, he closes his eyes, staying still for a moment, and they snap open, his once purple eyes having turned red with his pupils having become slits. He rises, pushing the clones away, sending them flying in an incredible display off speeds at each of them one by one. Scars, bruises, and all, dispatching of them with singed strikes until they're all gone, and he's standing alone in the training ground under the starlit night sky. He raises his right hand, looking at it in the darkness before balling it into a fist, his eyes having returned to their normal color by now. So you've gotten stronger. Well, I can get stronger too. Much stronger. Just you wait. It'll be you and me. You'll lay at my feet and finally be forced to acknowledge me. He jumps away, landing at the top of the tallest tree in his sight, laying eyes on the Hokage monument, visible even from here. I will be the greatest, he exclaims, punching a fist into the air. Uchiha clan compound. That is the truth, sensei, Naruto says as Fugaku stares at him blankly. I won't try to prove anything to you. Whether you choose to believe me or not is your choice. I've simply told you because as my sensei, as well as someone I've come to respect, I feel the need to answer and be honest to your question, Naruto says to the still silent Uchiha clan head. He continues to walk on. Forgive me, but I simply can't join your family for dinner, he says while walking away. I won't stand here and claim I understand precisely what you've experienced. That would be a lie, Fugaku says, causing his student to stop in his tracks. All the pain that you've endured has taught you to be weary of those around you, hasn't it? The Uchiha patriarch speaks. The blonde stays silent at his sensei's question, needing not speak to answer it. It's clear, in obvious ways like your refusal to give away any information about your skills to subtle ones, like the way your eyes are always moving over your surroundings alertly even in the calmest moments with comrades near you, he continues, causing Naruto's eyes to widen at the Uchiha's astute observations. Respect isn't enough, Naruto. Strength isn't enough. Not for me, you or anyone. Sooner or later, you're going to have to start trusting me as your sensei. Trusting your comrades. Trusting those close to you, he says, watching the blonde boy, whose back is still turned to him. His student stays silent for a few moments before finally speaking. Have a good night, Fugaku-sensei, he utters plainly before disappearing in a blur. Uzumaki Namikaze's household. But Mom Dash, Menma pleads with a hand on the cherries pulled out. But nothing, Menma. You're not eating at my table until you're clean. Have you caught a whiff of your own stench? Kushina yells in response, her hair swaying from her head in 9 tender-like bunches, as though having a life of its own. The other 4 in the room watch on at this scene, sweat dropping. Kakashi looks on at the scene before looking over at his sensei, who chuckles as his student shoots him a look that says, "You sure know how to pick him, sensei," the masked shinobi says inwardly before looking back at the scene, afraid by some magic the redhead had heard his thought. All eyes in the living room turn to its entrance as a newcomer walks in. Uncle Fugaku Menma says, seeing Satsuki and Sasuke's father. "Fugaku, what a pleasant surprise. Have you come to join us?" Kushina smiles. Fugaku looks at her for a moment, usual stern expression in place, before looking at Minato. "He told me everything. Naruto told me everything," he utters. Minato eyes widen for a second before his head lowers, hanging in shame. Mito does the same, as does Kushina, whilst Yayoi feels the sting of tears in her eyes once again. Kakashi, all the while, watches on at this scene with an eyebrow raised, an eye narrowed in confusion and curiosity. "Humph. And just what did that lying loser say to you?" Menma scoffs. He yelps in pain as Kushina smacks him over the head, silencing him. Fugaku continues to look directly at the Hokage, as though the boy's words and his received smack haven't registered at all. He sees the shame on the blonde's face and knows the answer, but chooses to ask anyway, still holding out hope for his friend. "Is it true?" he demands in a calm voice. Minato remains silent, giving the Uchiha his answer. The blonde Hokage stands up, walking towards the Jonin. "He spoke to you?" Minato asks, coming to a stop in front of Fugaku. "He spoke to you openly and honestly? How did—" "What exactly did H-?" Minato asks in a voice laced with desperation, only to be cut off by the man in front of him. "Under normal circumstances, I would just be letting you know how bitterly disappointed I am in you as a friend," the Jonin says, the Hokage's head lowering in shame once again. "But that boy is my student, which means he's one of my own. So telling you I'm disappointed, unfortunately, is not all I'm obliged to do," Fugaku says before cocking his fist back and launching it forwards at his friend's face. Minato sees the punch coming and stays still, not dodging. He deserves this. The fist collides with his cheek, sending him backwards and laying him out onto his back. A shocked silence hangs over the room for a split second. It is quickly broken as Menma lunges at the Uchiha, yelling angrily. He doesn't get close, though, as with a thud he suddenly finds himself on the floor on his stomach, with both his hands pinned behind his back, Kakashi kneeling over him on one knee, holding him down. "Bastard, do you have any idea whose house this is? That's the Hokage. Let me go, big bro Kakashi. Let me teach this asshole a lesson. Kick his ass, dad." Menma yells angrily, struggling to no avail beneath Kakashi. The masked ninja watches on at the scene calmly, sighing to himself. If anyone would have the audacity to walk into the Hokage's home and punch him right in front of his family, it could only be Fugaku Uchiha. He looks over at his sensei, who deliberately took the punch. AMD stays calm, trusting his teacher to handle himself, but stays ready at a moment's notice to incapacitate the struggling boy beneath him and jump in if things get seriously heated. Fugaku continues looking down at Minato, still not acknowledging the shouting child. Kushina yells Minato's name as he falls, rushing to his side and kneeling to check on him. She grits her teeth and stands up to face her husband's attacker, only to suddenly see Minato suddenly standing in front of her, facing her, hands raised. "No, don't do anything stupid," he says firmly. "Minato, it's nothing. I deserve a whole lot more," he says, causing his wife to look down again, tears forming in her eyes again. The sight piles further weight on the mountain of guilt already crushing him. Fugaku he turns only to see his friend is gone. He sighs as the sound of his wife shaking and weeping is clear behind him. It hurts having to turn around and face what he's responsible for. An ANBU shinobi appears in front of him in a burst of smoke, in the standard kneeling position. "Lord Hokage, I have some urgent news time skip. 6 days later, all warfare is based on deception. Hence, when we are able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. Naruto shuts the book and places it on his made bed. He'll continue reading when he gets back, like he's done countless times. He stands up, walking towards his bedroom door. He'll be meeting his team today after 6 full days off. A messenger hawk having dropped off a message to attend for duty as usual on his balcony yesterday morning. During his time off, Naruto had done a bit of training, but not much intense work, unfortunately. The reason? Space. He'd been mostly confined to his apartment during these days. Satsuki's brother, quite annoyingly, had decided not to honor the terms of their deal and come looking for him again. Naruto, not in the mood to deal with him, had left his training ground as soon as he sensed his chakra signature approaching the first time. It became apparent to him on the second occasion, the day right after, that Sasuke wasn't going to leave him alone, so he chose to steer clear of the training ground for the time being. Thankfully, the boy doesn't know where he lives, because if that were the case and Sasuke comes knocking on his door, there will be trouble. He closes his bedroom door behind him, locking it, scoffing in a show of frustration at the predicament. It's annoying. The blonde wants to continue training properly, and was already in a predicament trying to decide whether to diversify his ninjutsu arsenal further, increase the intensity of his taijutsu regimen, or hone his kenjutsu. He's felt his speed and strength plateauing for a little while now, and has also been recently contemplating the acquisition of a special weapon of choice. An annoyance like this is plain unnecessary. Hokage Tower. Hokage's office. Minato sits back, the files on all the village's genin teams neatly sorted on his desk. He props his chin on his fist in thought. The exams commence in 7 days, and today each Jonin sensei willing to allow his or her team to participate is to declare so to him, as well as notify his or her team and inform them on the exams, and give them time to decide if they are willing to participate. He's allowed to deny entry to certain teams, but this year he believes the decision will lay largely in the hands of the Jonin sensei responsible for the teams. The exams will present the opportunity to observe some of the Hidden Sounds ninja closely for himself. He's already begun arrangements to dispatch AMBU operatives disguised as merchants into the land of rice, soon to gather intel. Having some of the Sounds ninja on hand in the village will perhaps give him an idea of what the enemy is made of. Fugaku, after his successful interrogation, had told him the Hidden Sound wasn't really a hidden village, but a series of laboratories and hideouts situated throughout the land of rice. That would make gathering intel harder. The original source was out of the question. Even if there was more intel to be retrieved from him, that isn't possible anymore. After the debacle that had occurred a few days ago at his home, an AMBU shinobi arrived to notify him that Mizuki had been murdered in his cell, his body burnt to a crisp. As of yet, not a single trace of evidence had been found leading to the killer. He or she had vanished into thin air, either infiltrating the prison and leaving later or already being within its walls. The former seems a bit too far-fetched for Minato. No one has ever, breaking in or out, bypassed the Hidden Leaf Strict Correctional Facility's security. None of the prisoners could have done the deed with the chakra suppressors on them, which can only be deactivated by a select few of the guards. He thinks that's where he'll start digging. It was clear to Minato, from the moment he heard, what exactly happened. Orochimaru had moved to protect the information concerning his operations, but the rogue Sannin had moved too late. He'll worry about Fugaku later. They're best friends. They've been through all sorts of turmoil and held together. Besides, Fugaku isn't really the one he needs to apologize and mend bridges with. He turns in his seat, looking out at the village, and sighs out loud to himself. Training Ground 12. Fugaku stands in front of his students, the 3 seated before him. The Chunin exams? Ino repeats her sensei's words, still in a bit of shock. That's right. These exams allow all genin, those who participate anyway, the opportunity to have their skills assessed. Those who are evaluated and deemed by the examiners as having the adequate skills to be awarded an ascension in rank then become Chunin, shinobi who, among other responsibilities, are allowed to lead their own squads on missions. Fugaku briefly explains, knowing his students know all about the exams, but simply following procedure by explaining it to them. Now, under normal circumstances, rookie genin teams do not compete, not because of any existing regulation, but because they're commonly seen as not being ready. But the three of you have shown yourselves to me as a unit of being capable of competing against shinobi above the level of genin, so I'm going to allow you the opportunity to enter. He watches as a determined smirk is etched across his daughter's face. He looks next to her to see Naruto try to keep his trademark blank expression, but notes his eyes sharpen. Satsuki can't contain her excitement. This is a huge opportunity to test herself against other ninja and get stronger. Becoming a Chunin would be a huge stepping towards her goals. Naruto visibly tries to stay relaxed, but he is excited, battling against shinobi from different villages in different nations with different arsenals. He almost feels like jumping. Becoming a Chunin would be valued verification of his growth to new levels as a shinobi. It would be a stepping stone towards the heights he aims for, and it would mean he's a step closer to being able to actively pursue that goal. Akasada's parents had taught him much of what he knew, and he had imparted said knowledge to his children. Yet they had all been killed. Whoever was responsible was far more than likely a formidable shinobi. He needs to keep getting stronger to prepare himself to face that threat when he comes face to face with it. Ino watches on nervously at her teammates. These two have helped her and held her up all the way. She doesn't think she's ready for this. Fugaku makes eye contact with her, noting her reaction. Participation isn't obligatory. If any one or two of you feels you're not ready, you can refuse entry, and the other two or one will compete, he says, lying through his teeth. All three need to compete as a three-man squad, otherwise they do not qualify. His intention is to ensure none of them feel pressured into competing. He proceeds to hand the three of them a series of forms to register for participation. The exams commence in 7 days. My responsibility is to notify the Hokage today of whether I have granted you permission to compete or not. Yours is to decide in the time between now and the day before the exams if you wish to participate. Of course, it's important you understand what this entails and the implications. The exams permit the use of lethal force in killing, as well as other things standard under normal mission conditions. Competing will mean placing one's life on the line, he says sternly. Satsuki finally takes notice of the expression on her female teammate's face and places a hand on her shoulder. Hey, we're in this together. We fight. Fall and win together, she says, looking into her comrade's eyes reassuringly. The Yamanaka looks over, smiling at her friend. She wants to get stronger, so she can fight alongside her teammates, and having the two of them enter, without her there just doesn't sound right. She feels as though she would be forsaking them. She turns her head to her Jonin sensei. Fugaku-sensei, I'd like to enter, she declares determinedly. So would I, Satsuki says immediately after. All heads turn to the male genin of the team. I will be competing in the exams, he says. A small smile comes onto Fugaku's face. Hokage Tower Hokage's office. Minato sits back watching the sunset, his chair and back turned to his desk. The meeting to decide participation in the Chunin exams had taken place hours ago. In an interesting turn of events, almost all the rookie teams would be competing. Almost because the Jonin captain of Team 12 hadn't been present for the meeting. Minato sighs, and immediately as he does he hears his door open. He turns to see Fugaku walk in and shut the door behind him. The Uchiha walks toward the desk and places 3 files on them. I hereby grant permission for Genin Team 12 to comp in this year's Chunin selection exams, he speaks. Minato nods. Not surprised, Fugaku doesn't feel the need to explain his decision like all the other Jonin sensei. An awkward silence hangs over the room as Fugaku stands with his hands in his pockets and Minato sits back in his chair. Look, the blonde speaks. I understand it, dash. Don't. Fugaku cuts him off, raising a hand. Don't explain yourself to me. I don't care about what happened the other night anymore. You and I go way back, and I'm not willing to let it come between us. If you feel angry about it, then so be it. I just needed to make you understand as a brother the weight of your actions, and I can't apologize for that. Fugaku says. Minato listens, his face blank before sighing once again. He smiles to himself. After all these years, Fugaku is still one of the only people he knows who doesn't see him as the fourth Hokage, who doesn't see him as the Yellow Flash, who still sees him as Minato, still sees him as the lonely orphan kid he would give food to back in the academy when he had nothing to eat and let sleep in his room at his clan compound for months, when he found himself on the streets. He stands up reaching his hand out and offering it to the Uchiha. Fugaku takes it, and the pair shake hands, smiling at one another. One step at a time, Minato is determined to make things right. 7 days later, Naruto walks down the street. His destination, the academy, the first venue of the exams, the day of their commencement having finally arrived. He is clad in his usual attire. Black shinobi sandals and black AMBU pants tucked into combat tape wrapped around his legs, as well as a black tight jersey top with sleeves that end just below the elbows, the head of a golden lion on display on his upper right sleeve. Over this, he wears a black sleeveless hoodie with gold lining and zipper, with said zipper left open. He forgoes his black wristbands this time, choosing from now on to keep his storage seal hidden in his jacket. The element of surprise is vital. Of course, with all of this, his headband is wrapped around his head. "Hey, let me go!" He hears a shout coming from around the corner he's about to turn. He raises an eyebrow, keeping at a normal pace. He turns the corner to see 6 individuals standing together. The first he easily recognizes as Ino. 3 are younger than the rest, academy students recognizable by the goggles atop their heads. The last 2 he doesn't recognize. One is male, and one is female. The male gripping one of the 3 academy students by the scruff of his shirt. Both don headbands of the hidden sand and look relatively young. They must be exam participants, the blonde surmises. The male is dressed in a black baggy cat-like suit and has purple paint on his face with a strange bandaged object on his back. The female, who has sandy blonde hair tied into 4 pigtails and teal eyes, is dressed in a single light purple colored off-the-shoulders garment that extends to halfway down her thighs with a red sash tied around her waist. Her headband, as opposed to her comrade who has his tied around his head, is tied to her neck. Naruto rolls his shoulders and stretches his neck a bit, staying relaxed but ready for confrontation. Then he senses it, an incredibly malevolent and menacing chakra in the tree hanging above the scene. He keeps his eyes on those in front of him in order not to alert the one who is clearly the biggest threat here that he is aware of his presence. All heads turn to him as he comes to a stop in front of the group. Naruto Ino greets with a voice of relief. One moment she's chasing a brat for making a derogatory comment about her outfit, the next he's smashed into and gotten himself in trouble with a foreign shinobi. Kankuro raises an eyebrow. "Who's this guy?" Konohamaru's eyes widen a bit. It's Big Brother's brother, the one everyone hates. Temari's heart skips a beat as she lays eyes on the newcomer. His golden blonde hair, his heart-shaped face, his striking, almost paralyzing cerulean blue eyes, those naturally red lips. She realizes her mouth is slightly ajar at the sight of this stunning male and closes it. Naruto, she repeats the name the other Leaf Ninja had uttered to herself. Naruto greets, nodding at her, before looking at the strangely dressed male. "You should really let the kid go," he says plainly. "Who's gonna make me kid?" Kankuro scoffs you, he half taunts. "I'm sure I'd have no trouble at all handling a professional circus act like you," Naruto says, looking the boy over again, still intrigued by his strange attire. Kankuro grits his teeth in anger at the kid's insult, while Ino and all the genin present chuckle, even Temari letting out a giggle much to Kankuro's anger. "What did you say, you lit dash?" "Honestly, though, I'd be the least of your worries," Naruto shrugs, considering the fact that that kid you're manhandling there, he continues, pointing at the boy in Kankuro's hand, is the grandson of the late 3rd Hokage, if I'm not mistaken, he utters casually. Kankuro's jaw drops and his complexion almost seems to go a shade paler, Temari also gasping in shock. Not too many people are going to clap for that trick. Are you trying to cause an international incident? He questions. Still stunned by the revelation, before Kankuro can release the brat himself, a stone strikes his hand. He yells in pain, releasing the boy who runs and hides behind Naruto immediately. Leave now, Naruto says sternly, not even glancing at the three children hiding behind him. They comply, running down the path in the direction he came. Kankuro looks up at the tree above in annoyance to see who threw the stone. You're a long way from home to be running around causing trouble. Clown Satsuki says, sitting on a branch with another rock in her hand. Ha! Kankuro chuckles, fights with smart-mouthed snot-nosed brats and smoking hot girls. Just what kind of place is this? Kankuro smirks, looking up at Satsuki, who simply raises an eyebrow at him. Satsuki, get down from there. Naruto shouts. The Uchiha's eyes widen, not used to hearing him shout. Your blood smells. Delicious, a low voice whispers in Satsuki's ear. The Uchiha reacts quickly, jumping away, down from the tree and landing next to her teammates, a kunai drawn, looking up at the tree. The two Sand Shinobi on the ground react in response to the action, the male drawing his own kunai and the female pulling the large war fan on her back off and holding it out in front of her at the ready. Ino pulls out her own kunai as well. The two groups stand off, glaring at one another, except for Naruto, who stands as calmly as before, hands still in his pockets, his eyes still on the tree, not showing any concern for the shinobi in front of him with weapons drawn. The two Sand Shinobi, weapons in hand, look on in awe at Naruto. He sensed Gaara's presence. Just who is this guy? Kankuro asks inwardly. He sensed Gaara. Naruto of the Leaf, huh? Temari stares as the cute blonde, saying the name to herself again to ensure not forgetting it. A figure stands upside down from one of the tree's branches, his appearance obscured by its shadow. He jumps down from the tree, landing in front of the two Sand Shinobi, revealing himself to be a male with fair skin, green eyes, and short spiky auburn hair, with seemingly no eyebrows or distinctive pupils. Black rings adorn the spaces around his eyes. The kanji for love is carved into the left side of his forehead in a strange-looking scar. The boy wears a black full body suit with an open neck, short sleeves, a white cloth over his right shoulder down to left hip, and wide leather band from his left shoulder to his right hip that tethers a large gourd to his back. His headband is tied to said leather band. Kankuro, why are you being a nuisance? The redhead questions, not even turning to look at his compatriot, rather staring straight at Naruto. You're a disgrace to our village, the redhead speaks, eyes still on Naruto. I am sorry, Gaara. I was J-. He stutters out only to be cut off. Shut up, or I'll kill you, he says, turning his head to his compatriot, causing him to stiffen in fear, as does Temari. He looks back at the group, staring directly at Naruto again, who looks back at him blankly. His eyes, they look just like... Gaara says inwardly. Those eyes, Naruto muses at seeing such cold, dark eyes. We've wasted enough time. Let's go, Naruto says to his teammates, who nod. He starts to walk off, attempting to walk around the 3-4 ninja, only to be stopped by the redhead. Wait, Gaara speaks, stopping the blonde in his tracks. What is your name? Gaara asks. Naruto raises an eyebrow before responding Naruto. My name is Naruto, he responds. Naruto, I am Gaara of the desert, the red-haired boy introduces himself. Mother is afraid of you. She says you're dangerous, that your blood must be spilt. I will enjoy tasting it. The Sand Shinobi speaks coldly, an eerie smile on his face. The two other Sand Shinobi's eyes widen in shock at their teammates' words. What? Okay, seriously. Who the hell is this guy? Kankuro thinks, staring at Naruto in shock. Temari looks on, also in shock, whilst Naruto's teammates look on in confusion and slight fear at the strange, intimidating red-haired ninja. Naruto shows no outward reaction, but inwardly notes to himself. Mother? What does this guy? He's dangerous. The blonde walks off without another word, his teammates following behind him. Leaf Shinobi Academy. The members of Team 12 stand before the entrance to the academy they left only months ago, ready to take another big step on their paths as shinobi. The three stand side by side, taking a moment to look one another in the eyes before nodding and walking in. Brewing tension somewhere in the land of fire, 7 men in black suits sit around a large table in a dimly lit grand-looking room. Some of the most expensive cuisine the world has to offer laid out before them. They all sit back looking at one another, paying the lavish food no mind. 2 more men in black suits of their own stand behind each seated male, each armed with a katana except for one. One set of 3 men sits on one side of the table, whilst another 3 sit on the other side, with a 7th sitting at the head of the table. At the other end sits an empty seat. All eyes in the room turn to it. Always sad when a friend passes, one of the seated men says in quite the nonchalant tone, suggesting the matter isn't at all troubling. Who was it? Another speaks in a tone laced with restrained anger. Who did this? The elderly man at the head of the table takes a drag of his cigar, inhaling the smoke and releasing it into the air above before casting a glance at the male clad in black to his right, the only one of those standing, not wielding a blade. He bears a head of blonde hair that obscures his right eye. The man responds by speaking. The investigation Big Boss Mishima had us carry out in the Land of Waves over the past couple of weeks yielded some info on the culprit of Boss Gato's murder. Not much, but some. The suit-clad man speaks, raising his right hand, missing a pinky finger, to pull on his cigarette. Apparently a leaf ninja did the deed. A guy by the name of Naruto. A genin who supposedly never went by any last name during his time in the Land of Waves. The male continues. Silence fills the room once again, all in it taking time to ponder the name. Naruto? Never heard of him. I suppose it's no surprise since he is a mere genin, another of the seated males says. He's gonna pay. My men will make sure this Naruto is found and pays for my brother's life. The suited male who had demanded the identity of Gato's killer vows. That was precisely what I was getting to, the elderly man at the head of the table identified as Mishima says. With all due respect, is this some sort of joke? Another of the seated men questions, speaking for the first time and earning the attention of all in the room. For years Gato made a mockery of us, hiring common low-life dogs who know nothing of our ways and traditions to serve under him, making moves to seize opposition territories without authorization or consultation, and sullying our honorable name, and you're suggesting we go out of our way to avenge the bastard? He questions. What did you just say, asshole? Gato's brother says, rising to his feet in a display of rage. The remaining seated men remain seated, as those who are standing draw their blades in response. Silence fills the room once again, the tension palpable as Gato's brother stares down the man who has just spoken, who looks back nonchalantly, not looking the least bit intimidated. Kohei, sit down. Sheath your blades. All of you, Mishima orders calmly but firmly. The male identified as Kohei hesitates for a moment before taking his seat, all the armed men in the room placing their blades back in their sheaths once again. Mishima looks around the room before speaking once again. This isn't just about Gato. Frankly, I don't care about avenging him. The loss of his life means nothing to me, Mishima speaks, Kohei gritting his teeth and balling his fist. This is about the integrity and the honor of the organization. If one of those who had a seat at the table is killed so easily and nothing is done about it, it will give the more opportunistic of those beneath us the impression that we've gone soft, that a seat at the table is simply for the taking. That is not acceptable, Mishima speaks, looking around the room at each of the seated men, cigar in hand, much like their attention. My sources tell me that negotiations between the Leaf and the Land of Waves to begin a formal alliance and trading relationship are all but concluded. The Land of Waves is thus now essentially under the Leaf's protection and out of our hands. And as we speak, lower-tier outsider-run gangs, despite being warned not to do anything stupid, are anxiously eyeing up the other territories Gato left behind. It's paramount, gentlemen, that at a time as uncertain as this, we send the right message to the rest of the Underworld. That the Yakuza are still the only top dogs, and that anyone who crosses us pays. Mishima continues. So for revenge's sake, he says, looking over at Kohei, or honor's sake, he continues turning to Gato's detractor. Or both. Naruto of the Leaf must die, he declares. He turns his head to the male to his right once again. Find out all there is to know about this Naruto. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with before we strike, he says, the blonde male nodding in response. Many attempts, like many of the men seated in this room, had been made on Gato's life in the past, some by some of these very men in the past. All said attempts had failed. This Naruto of the Leaf succeeded where many others have failed. He wants to know all he can before any action is taken. There's no actual evidence, but he has a gut feeling, honed by years in the streets and in battle. They won't be dealing with anyone ordinary. Hidden Leaf Village. Ninja Academy Team 12 come to a stop after entering the building as they come across a large commotion. A large group of genin stands before two Chunin, recognizable to Team 12. Hey, let us in. We're here to compete. A female Leaf genin dressed in a pink sleeveless cheapao top and navy pants, sporting two buns of hair atop her head, pleads stepping forward. She reels back as one of the Chunin backhands her. Tenten, another Leaf genin, this one male, with a bowl-style haircut and a bushy pair of eyebrows, wearing a green jumpsuit, orange leg warmers, and plenty of combat tape around his arms, rushes to her side in concern. Ha! Pathetic, Kotesta scoffs. If you can't even take that, then you don't stand a chance in these exams, he declares, the other genin stiffening in discomfort and murmuring nervously. Naruto's eyes are on the sign above the door the two Chunin are blocking, paying the commotion no mind. He turns his head to Satsuki, who is already looking at him. She nods and he nods back, inwardly impressed. She noticed the genjutsu quicker than he did. He turns his head to Ino, who is looking ahead at the scene. She too turns her head and nods at the two. The three proceed to make their way around the group and towards the stairs, their destination the real exam venue. Hidden Leaf Ninja Academy, Chunin exam venue. So you guys are here too, a voice utters from behind Menma. The boy turns away from his sisters to see his best friend and his partner atop his head with his teammates either side of him. Bro, Menma happily greets as the two fists bump one another. Hey, Akamaru, he says, greeting the Inuzuka's partner, who barks back in acknowledgement. H.I.M.M. Mito, Yayoi, Hinata greets shyly blushing and looking down, attempting to avoid eye contact with him. Good to see you guys here, Yayoi happily greets in return, Mito smiling and nodding in agreement. It's no surprise to see you three here, I suppose, Shino says. You are, after all, the strongest rookie team the village has to offer, Aburame clan member says. Geez, Shino, way to kiss the opposition's ass. Kiba scoffs, shaking his head. Shino's only visible response being a twitch of the eyebrow. He's telling the truth, isn't he? No doubt about it. We're here to win. Nothing else, Menma assures. The pair of friends begin competitively bickering with one another about how much further one will go than the other, whilst two of the three females in the group watch on, shaking their heads. Shino, meanwhile, looks down at the back of his hand to see one of his insects fly off it, and about in a familiar display of excitement and anxiety. There's only one chakra that his insects react to like this. He's here, the Aburame says to himself. As he lifts his head to look around, he hears a high-pitched scream fill the room, all heads turning. A blurred purple-colored figure speeds past him and collides with Menma, enveloping him. Menma, I missed you so much, Ino says, happily clinging to him. Hey, Ino, Menma responds, casually returning the hug for only a few seconds before letting go, all the while looking around. If Ino's here, then that means he sees her, standing at the entrance to the room looking as stunning as ever, her brown eyes striking to him even from this distance. He frowns as he sees him standing next to her. Ino opens her eyes and looks at the red and black-haired boy after he lets her go, looking to see where he is looking. A jolt of pain hits her as she sees his eyes on her female teammate, standing across the room at the door. It's plain to see Menma is as crazy about Satsuki as ever. She doesn't blame him. Satsuki is, after all, the most beautiful girl in their age group in the whole village. She holds no ill will towards her friend either, but it still hurts to see him look at someone else like that. The way she wants him to look at her. With Naruto and Satsuki Naruto's eyes scan across the room as many of the other genin present proceed to glare at the newly arrived Team 12 as the double doors shut behind him and Satsuki, attempting to intimidate the rookies. He meets their stares calmly, as does Satsuki, walking a few steps before leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets. He looks to his side to see Satsuki walk and stand near him, raising his eyebrow for a split second in surprise at the girl choosing to stay with him instead of going off with Ino to the other rookie genin, who are gathering in a group. "Is something wrong?" she asks, catching his reaction despite his attempt to keep it masked. "No, nothing," he responds. With other Leaf rookie genin, what a drag. "You guys are here too," Shikamaru says to the group as Team 10 join them. "Gosh, you haven't changed one bit, Shikamaru." "Still a lazy ass as always," Ino says, rolling her eyes, arms still wrapped around Menma. Shikamaru looks at the Yamanaka clinging to Menma, and then looks at the red and black-haired boy whose attention seems to be elsewhere, eyes glued to the other side of the room. Shikamaru follows the gaze to be met with the sight of the other two members of Team 12 standing together. And him. "Well, by the looks of it, you guys haven't changed much either," he answers. "Is Team Illy dash?" Shikamaru is cut off from finishing his sentence, as all heads turn to the door, another team belonging to the Leaf entering. "Sasuke!" Sakura happily exclaims, jumping for joy. Meanwhile, Shino's shade-covered eyes are on the blonde Leaf ninja, clad in black, standing across the room. Shino looks back down at his hands to see a few more of his insects crawling along his hands quickly and a few taking flight. He infuses some of his own chakra in an attempt to calm the creatures. "It seems your chakra is as intimidating as ever." Naruto, with Team 11 Hizadaru, once again chuckles to himself. Still not over the ass-kicking the Uchiha has just taken at the hands of that other weird-looking Leaf genin. He inwardly sighs to himself. This is the less fun part about being undercover. Not being able to have fun and go all out all the time. He would have loved to take that guy on for himself. Sasuke inwardly curses to himself as Team 11 enter the exam venue. He had been beaten. Humiliated. Again. First Naruto, now that weird-lookingly guy. To think there were such incredible fighters in his own village, capable of dispatching of even him easily. It makes him wonder how many other ninja-like that there are from other villages in this very room. The three spot to the rest of the Leaf rookie genin as soon as they walk in and walk towards them. With rookie genin group, "Sasuke!" Sakura exclaims, walking up to the Uchiha boy as Team 7 step up to the group. "I just knew you were going to be here." There's no way the strongest genin in the village wasn't going to compete in the exams, she says, looking at him adoringly, with the boys saying nothing in response, staring back at her blankly. Hizadaru chuckles again, Sasuke turning and frowning at him in response. "Yeah, the strongest genin in the village." Sasuke hears in a class of his own. Hizadaru chuckles while Kaori rolls her eyes. Hizadaru just loves winding Sasuke up. Is she really going to have to separate these two in front of all these people? "Sasuke is not the strongest billboard brow," Ino says to the pink-haired Kunoichi. "Oh boy, here we go," Shikamaru says, shaking his head, as all the rookies present heave a collective sigh, knowing what's to come. "Yes, he is Ino Pig," Sakura shouts, angrily turning to the Yamanaka, who finally lets go of Menma. "No, he's not," she denies. "Ugh, we get it. Menma and Sasuke are really cool. Can you two pipe down?" Kiba interjects. They both turn their heads to Kiba, Sakura ready to bite his head off, only for Ino to speak before she can. "Menma's not the strongest either," Ino says, finally earning the boys' attention as all the rookies' eyes widen in surprise at the blonde's words. "What?" Kiba utters, confused, surprised to hear these words from the blonde who has always been infatuated with his best friend. "Then who is?" Yayoi questions. "If anyone in our graduating class is the strongest genin in the village, it's N-. Hey, you know you really shouldn't be attracting so much attention to yourselves, a voice is interrupting the discussion. All heads in the group turn to see a newcomer. His headband identifies him as a citizen of the leaf like them. He bears ash-gray hair tied in a ponytail and onyx-colored eyes with black-rimmed, circular glasses over them. He wears a dark purple shirt with a high collar, a white undershirt, and dark purple pants with a white cloth waistband. On his hands are fingerless gloves the same color as his pants with armored plates on the back of his hands. And just what's it got to do with you? Ino asks the stranger, huffing. Sorry, the newcomer chuckles. I meant no offense. Just looking out for some fellow leaf ninja. You're the rookies, right? Fresh out of the academy. Take a look around. You've made quite the impression, the gray-haired young male says, directing the attention of the genin to their surroundings. The genin finally look around themselves to realize the noise their group has been making has attracted some unwanted attention, most of the genin in the room glaring and staring them down. Hinata, Choji, Sakura, and Ino shift uncomfortably, growing nervous faced with the glares. Yayoi simply huffs, while Mito crosses her arms, showing no other outward reaction. Shino displays no outward reaction at all, while Shikamaru's trademark nonchalant expression remains in place. Man, what a drag, he says. Nice work, Ino and Sakura, Kiba grumbles. Sasuke's face remains blank, the Uchiha not intimidated by the glares. While his Zatara chuckles a bit. Cute, he muses sarcastically. He wonders how many of these guys will be a threat, though. Menma turns around and looks around the room, meeting the glares. Anybody here got a problem? The red and black-haired boy questions loudly. The room falls silent, all eyes on him. He slams his foot on the ground in front of him. If anybody in here has a problem with me or any of the people standing behind me, step right up right now and let's solve it, he shouts. The room remains silent, Menma scoffing. Bunch of posing cowards, he says, turning back to the group of rookies. Gosh, Menma, you're so cool, Ino exclaims in admiration, while Shikamaru's eyebrow twitches. That's your big solution? Making things worse, he says, dragging his palm down his face in a gesture of exasperation. With Team Guy. Say, isn't that the other Rookie of the Year? Asks a boy in his early teens with long dark brown hair and white eyes with a slight lavender tint to them as he sits with his teammates, the three having arrived discreetly by teleportation, so as not to attract attention. Indeed, he is one of the famed Hero 3 of the Leaf. Lee responds to his teammate, son of the 4th Hokage. I look forward to testing the limits of my youth against him, Lee says, eyes on the black and red-haired boy. A few foreign shinobi overhearing him and gasping and murmuring in shock. Niji simply grunts, eyes also intently on the boy. Typical Lee, ready as ever for a fight. He recognizes a boy now. He is indeed the 4th son. His father and the boy's own are friends, but the two themselves have never spent any time together. He seems quite brash. He wonders if the boy has a technique to stand behind his words. So that's Menma Uzumaki Namikaze, huh? Tenten says. With Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro. Temari simply scoffs at the display, seeing nothing but a loud-mouthed brat eager to get himself killed. Lot of loudmouths and smartasses in this village, Kankuro says, looking at the red and black-haired boy after he turns away again. At this point I'm itching to shut one up, he says, smirking. The Sand Shinobi turns to his siblings to see Temari with her arms crossed, looking unimpressed, and Gaara looking in another direction completely, showing no interest in the boy. Kankuro follows the redhead's gaze to be met with the sight of two of the Leaf Shinobi they ran into earlier. Hey, it's that Naruto guy. Kankuro muses, turning his head back to the redhead, who continues staring intently, paying him no mind. With Naruto and Satsuki. It's honestly strange remembering sometimes that you and Menma are actually brothers, Satsuki says after the two witness the boy's outburst. Naruto stays silent, choosing not respond to her words. The two stand in silence once again after having spoken with one another since entering the venue. Naruto closes his eyes for 2 seconds, infusing his chakra, Satsuki all the while watching on at first in confusion and then realization. His eyelids rise, his head turning to look to the back of the classroom. His cerulean orbs lock with a pair of teal ones. They belong to none other than the red-haired sand shinobi he had met earlier in the day. The two stare at each other, Satsuki following his gaze and realizing where he's looking. That guy, something about him seems like trouble. A different kind of trouble. Satsuki says, eyes narrowing. Naruto breaks eye contact with the sand shinobi, turning to his teammate. Satsuki, if it happens that you come face to face with that sand shinobi, don't fight him, Naruto says firmly. The Uchiha girl frowns slightly in reaction to being told what to do. Eyebrow raised while crossing her arms. I can take care of myself, Naruto. The brown-eyed girl says in a matter-of-fact tone, I never questioned that but you dash. His head turns sharply in the direction of the group of rookies, Satsuki following suit. Before Naruto disappears in a black blur. Meanwhile, with Leaf rookies, whoa. The guy's been on a B rank as a genin and never been injured. Shikamaru utters in much the same shock all else present in the group seemed to be in, seeing the information on the sand shinobi Ino had asked about. Ino looks on, eyes wide in shock. No way. This guy is that strong. She thinks to herself in slight fear, looking down at the info card. She thinks back to his words when they first saw him. I have to tell Naruto to watch out for this guy. Could her teammate, even in all his strength, be a match for someone who has never been injured? Is there anyone else you'd like to know about? I can provide you with intel on shinobi from pretty much any village, apart from the hidden sound. They're a small, young village from a relatively uninfluential nation, so I can't give you much on them, Kabuto says. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Sasuke says, earning surprised looks from all the rookies present. Right, Kabuto says, shuffling his cards once again. He stops placing his index finger on the top card, spinning it. As he turns it, 3 shinobi spring in front of the group suddenly. Before Ino can react, a hand grabs her by the arm, pulling her away as though she were a mere rag doll. Naruto speeds from across the room as soon as he senses and sees the sound ninja approach the rookies, making a beeline for Ino, grabbing her by the arm and jumping back, throwing her to the ground behind, standing in front of her in a gesture of protection. Hizadaru jumps in front of Kori, pulling out a kunai Sasuke, meanwhile flipping out a kunai of his own. Yayoi, Mito, and Menma jump into a triangular formation, backs to one another. One of the sound ninja throws a punch at Kabuto's face, who dodges it. Suddenly the glass of his spectacles cracks into 2 spider webs of shards. He hunches over, clutching at his ears, wincing and crying out in pain, coughing up a bit of bile. The masked sound ninja doesn't get much time to examine his handiwork as a fist to the face from Menma sends him flying back. He lands with an unceremonious thud. His teammates look on in shock for a split second before attempting to retaliate in anger, but before they can do so, a burst of smoke fills the front of the class. All right, listen up, you baby-faced degenerates. The smoke clears to reveal several Leaf Chunin flanking a male with scars stretching across his face, wearing a bandana with the hidden leaf forehead protector on it. I am Ibiki Marino, proctor for the first round of the Chunin selection exams, he declares. He casts his glance to the group of Leaf, and Sound Ninja only steps away from him. Any unsanctioned combat will result in immediate disqualification for those partaking in it, as well as their teammates. This is the first and last warning any of you will receive, he says sternly. Apologies, sir. Mito apologizes on behalf of the group of Leaf Ninja, bowing her head. Dosu, by now having just sat up, frowns, narrowing his eyes at Menma, who isn't even looking at him anymore. His teammates help him up by an arm each, the 3 walking away. That brat's gonna pay Zaku vows. He's got his coming. Don't worry. But did you see how fast that blonde guy moved? Keep an eye on him, he says, looking at both his teammates on either side of him, who nod in affirmative. Naruto turns to Ino, tucking the 2 kunai in each hand back into his weapon's pouch, the heads of the group turning to him in shock. Are you all right? He asks the blonde. She nods, taking his hand. As he helps her up, a look of disappointment is etched on her face. Again, She'd found herself in the middle of a confrontation, and once again she needed a teammate to help her. Yayoi looks on, a look of awe and sadness etched on her face as she sees her brother extend his hand and help his teammate, a gesture of kindness being something she's never seen him perform. Big Brother was only worried about protecting Ino. He didn't even look at us, she inwardly says sadly. Menma looks on in silent shock. And no way. That speed. How did he do that? The red and black-haired boy questions inwardly in disbelief. He watches as the boy offers Ino his hand, his eyebrows rising in confusion. Naruto protecting someone? But Naruto doesn't care about anyone. He never has. Just what is going on here? Naruto turns and begins walking back to Satsuki, walking past the group as though they aren't even present, Ino following. Satsuki blinks, deactivating her Sharingan. She places the kunai she had pulled out back in her weapons pouch, as her teammates step up to her, having pulled it out and moved towards the group seeing the commotion. "Are you guys all right?" she asks, the two nodding in response. "What just happened?" she questions, turning to Ino. "I don't know. That Kabuto guy said something about the hidden sound. All of a sudden they showed up. They must have been offended," the Yamanaka responds, turning her head along with her teammates to Kabuto, now being tended to by Mito and Yayoi. Naruto looks at the group to see them all staring at him in wonder and shock. All except for two, that is. Sasuke, who stares at him knowingly, and he looks to see Menma standing near Mito, Yayoi, and Kabuto, a single fist clenched, glaring at him. Naruto meets his gaze calmly before turning and walking away without a word. "Are you sure you don't need a medical ninja?" Mito asks. "I'm fine, really. Thank you," the gray-haired young male assures. He glances at the blond boy garbed in black, walking away from the group, seeing him clearly through the holes once occupied by the glass of his rimmed spectacles, narrowing his eyes in thought. "With Team Guide, such incredible speed. Who is that?" Lee shouts in disbelief and excitement, slamming a fist onto the desk he is sitting on. Tenten watches on, speechless. No way. He's just as if not faster than Lee. How did he react that quick? She thinks in shock. Niji stares at the blond boy, eyes narrowed in thought. He looks familiar. Isn't that? It is that boy, the one everyone in the village. So then he says, outwardly piecing the puzzle in his head together. He's the loud one's brother, the second son of the fourth. Niji says, come to think of it, isn't the blonde older? Far more disturbingly, however, he knows the blonde to be an untalented shinobi, the worst of his generation. Even the most talented of genin among a class of graduates aren't anywhere near that level of speed and reactivity. Niji's eyes narrow in thought. His interest has been piqued. With Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, Kankuro's mouth hangs open in disbelief. No way. I had my eyes on him. I didn't even see him move. He speaks, eyes still on the blonde clad in black. Temari looks on with a similar expression, having noticed the blonde from earlier after realizing her siblings were staring at something. All that had moved before he'd suddenly been on the other side of the room was his head turning sharply in the direction of the skirmish between Leaf and Sound before it had even broken out. Gaara looks on at Naruto as well, his breathing having visibly picked up. A small smile graces his lips, one that his teammates look to him and slightly tremble at seeing. The red-haired boy licks his lips, his eyes closing for a moment. He can almost taste it. His eyes shoot open and lock onto the blonde once again. With a beekeep, all right. Enough chatter. You will all now draw lots and be assigned random seats, which you will occupy for the duration of the first round of the exams. Ibiki announces. With Fugaku, Fugaku stands before the memorial stone in silence as the wind howls. He lays down the bouquet of flowers in his hand against the monument, his eyes remaining glued to it even as a familiar presence appears next to him. Long time no see. A calm voice speaks, earning his attention. He turns his head to the left to see Kakashi standing next to him. Not too long, though. Has it Kakashi? The Uchiha responds, greeting back, before turning his head back down to the monument. Kakashi chooses not to ask his second teacher about his clash with his first sensei. It's none of his concern, really. The two, knowing them, are probably back on friendly terms. One thing that is certain, however, is his own interest in his sensei's eldest child has grown even further. He looks down at the monument as well, the two standing together for a few silent moments. "Tell me, how's Sasuke coming along?" The Uchiha head asks, a small smile gracing Kakashi's mask-clad face for a second. "He's doing well. He seems even more motivated nowadays, in fact. He's training even harder than before, as crazy as that may sound. I think his sister awakening her Sharingan has lit some fire underneath him. He's doing all he can to make sure he doesn't get left behind." "There could be more to it, though," Kakashi says while Fugaku's eyes remain glued to one among the collection of names. "I see. So I take it you're confident in your bunch, then," Fugaku says, turning his head to the masked Jonin, who scratches the back of his head meekly in response, the two chuckling together. "I believe in them," Kakashi responds simply. "They're a lot like the three of us were back then, Fugaku-sensei. It's strange," he says somberly, looking down at the monument again, while a small smile graces Fugaku's lips. He can understand Kakashi, seeing some of himself in Sasuke. In truth, he does too. But to think there's someone on Kakashi's team similar, in any way to Obito, he can't wait to meet whoever that is, as well as see what they're made of in the exams. "What about yours?" the masked ninja questions. Fugaku looks up at his son's best friend, before looking back down at the memorial stone. "My team," he says, a knowing smirk gracing his face. "Just you wait and see." He responds, piquing the copy ninja's own interest. Leaf Ninja Academy, exam venue. Right, Ibiki addresses the room full of genin who've taken their assigned seating. The first round of the Chunin selection exams, he speaks, looking around the room at the expressions of anticipation that stare back at him, begins now. The written exam Naruto sits back, hands in his pockets as a silence of anticipation fills the room. The proctor, in what seems to be enjoyment to the blonde, stands in a torturous silence, soaking every ounce of attention from the cadet ninja, seated in their allocated seats in the room. The genin's eyes stay on the exam proctor, paying no mind to the girl next to him who keeps turning her head to lay her eyes on him. Yayoi looks to her left for the umpteenth time to glance at her brother, the blonde boy staring ahead, having not spared her so much as a single glance since he first sat down next to her. She sighs. He had always been distant and silent, just not the same way. Before, there had been a gentleness to his reserved nature that had always intrigued her. She can still remember vividly when that changed. The first time she'd seen the black garments and ironclad thousand-yard gaze that had come to epitomize him. Flashback. Yayoi jumps in a bit of a fright as the flash of lightning that illuminates the dark hallway that leads to her room is accompanied by a crack of thunder. The bright light and loud sound not only shakes off her drowsiness, but brings into view the figure walking down the hallway towards her. A sigh of relief escapes her as she realizes the figure to be her eldest sibling, in the flesh for the first time in days. Quite miraculously, he'd been to the academy the very first day after waking up from his coma. Since then, he's not been seen by anyone for 4 days. She watches as he walks towards her, a shaft of light from the window on the right of the corridor, shining down onto his drenched figure. She gasps as she notices the amount of weight he's lost, looking more frail than she's ever seen him. His usual orange and blue gear are nowhere to be seen, a black long-sleeved shirt and pants in place of them. She inwardly panics slightly as she mulls over her words to him for a moment. She won't be rude to him this time, or belittle him in an effort to get his attention or elicit a reaction from him. She just wants to hear his voice and know he's okay. "There you are," she says as they come within steps of each other. "Where the heck have you been, Naruto? Mom and Dad have been worried sick. You just got out of the hospital dash," she spews, stopping while the thin blonde boy, eyes shadowed by his wet locks, continues to walk forward, as though her words have not registering. He walks past her, as though she isn't even there. Yayoi, beginning to feel frustrated, grabs the boy from behind by his collar. I'm not just going to let you walk off and ignore me like you always do, she says firmly. Where do you get off completely disregarding how we feel about you? Are we ever going to matter to you again? She pleads, her eyes watering while still gripping his collar. His head turns slowly to meet her desperate gaze. The girl's grip slowly releases as she is met with the blonde's own gaze. Ice cold and chilling, robbing her of the will to even move. She then notices a lone tear drop, trailing down his right cheek. H's eyes. They're different. Naruto, what's happened to you? The blonde girl inwardly questions. A flash of lightning bathes the corridor once again, and as it does, she swears for a fraction of a second that the cerulean blue and whites of his eyes turn to a bright glowing white, reminiscent in color of the lightning flashing in the night sky outside. Just as quickly as eyes are back to that deep cold gaze again, Yayoi frozen by it. He turns his head again and continues to walk down the corridor, not uttering a single word. Flashback end. Yayoi's mouth opens, but no words leave it, the object of her attention still focusing his own elsewhere. The first round of these exams will be a written exam consisting of 10 questions, Ibiki speaks, as the Chunin lined up on either side of the room proceed to hand out papers to the genin. The rules of this exam are as follows. Rule 1. There are 10 questions with each question worth a point. Every question answered incorrectly is a point lost. Rule 2. Every cheating offense will result in a 2 points deduction. Once the maximum of 10 points has been expended, disqualification is the result. And Rule 3. Any participant found to have scored 0 points, by way of disqualification or otherwise, will fail along with their teammates. Ibiki says, an uproar being the result. Silence, he orders, to which the genin comply. You will have 1 hour to complete the exam. The 10th question will be given verbally 45 minutes into the exam. Your time starts now. With Naruto, 10 o'clock on the dot, reads the clock mounted on the wall at the front of the class. Naruto grabs the piece of paper in front of him and turns it over. His eyes scan over it for a few moments. After reading it for a second time, he sits forward, resting his chin upon interlocked hands, his eyes closed. This is not genin-level theory. In fact, most Chunin-level ninja would struggle with some of these questions. A maximum of 5-point deductions for cheating offenses instead of immediate disqualification. And theory practically impossible for genin-level ninja to understand Naruto analyses. His eyelids rise, his eyes darting around the room and up at the ceiling. Intelligence gathering, huh? All right then. With Ino smirks to herself, inwardly squealing as she memorizes the last bit of billboard brows work. Of course, Forehead, having the big brain she does, had made relatively short work of the exam paper, and taking control of her body had proven no trouble at all. She smirks slyly to herself again. Sensei only banned her from using it in real combat situations after all, so this was perfectly fine. Come on, guys. We've got this, she inwardly assures, confident her teammates are by now going about getting the answers. With Satsuki, you always did spend so much time trying to master your theory. Satsuki says inwardly, her Sharingan eyes firmly on an exam participant a few rows ahead of her. Maybe that's why you were never able to beat me, she muses. No, that's not it. In any case, you've turned out to be useful, Mito. She says to herself as her Sharingan effortlessly copies the pen strokes of the redhead meters away from her, filling her exam paper with answers. With Naruto, Team 43 fail, yet another Chunin proctor's voice calls out. Team 37 failed, another calls out. Naruto sits still as a projectile darts past him and embeds itself into the desk behind him. He turns his head to see a distraught-looking Leaf Genin, looking down at the kunai jutting through his paper and desk. Team 21 fail. The blonde turns his head back to the front, cracking his knuckles and patiently awaiting. Ibiki watches on, eyes narrowing in thought, as he notes the blonde's nonchalant reaction, not stiffening or flinching one bit during the display. That kunai could have killed him, and yet He says to himself as he looks at the genin, looking calm and collected, having directed his attention back to his test. With Naruto's shadow clone here, he says to himself, as he senses the chakra signature he's looking for right below him. He reaches in the darkness for his weapon's pouch, producing a kunai. He infuses some wind-style chakra, running it along the blade's length and stabbing it into the bottom section of the vent, cutting a small circle. He infuses chakra into the finger of his other hand, placing it on the piece of surface he's cutting. The blonde pulls his finger away, the circle sticking to it. Placing it aside, he reaches into his pouch again, this time pulling out a circular piece of glass, framed by its own circular piece of black steel. He brings up it to his eye, leveling it with the hole, looking down into the exam venue, past a head of red hair tied into a ponytail, to see an exam paper with almost all of its questions answered. He gets to work memorizing it. With Naruto, a wave of memories hits him, and as it does, he picks his pen up, filling in all the answers he hasn't managed to give. With Menma taps his pencil a few times, the sound echoing throughout the silent room, no one paying it any mind. 2 minutes pass before he hears the responding set of taps come from his sister Rose down. He smirks to himself as he writes the remaining answers down. With Mito on their team and their level of communication, there's no way they could ever fail this exam. He just hopes Yayoi can keep her head in the game, that being put next to him doesn't distract her. Meanwhile, with Niji's eyes sweep across the room, Byakugan active and searching for answers, the Hyuga genin stops in his proverbial tracks, gasping in awe at what has caught his attention. In the sea of chakra networks of all the exam participants, Niji lays his eyes on one in particular, unlike all the other individuals in the room, whose chakra shines a blue hue as it flows through their bodies. A snow-white color radiates throughout this individual's chakra network. The shock causes Niji to release his grip on his pencil for a moment, earning a raised eyebrow from the genin seated next to him, as he gazes at the blonde boy in black once again. He flares his chakra, attempting to release any genjutsu. None seems to have been cast. Just what kind of chakra is that? The Hyuga questions inwardly. Just, what is he exactly? With Naruto sits with chin rested upon interlocked hands. The blonde can feel a few pairs of eyes on him now, though not entirely sure where each pair is located in the room. His own display earlier on in that skirmish between Sound and Leaf must have attracted some attention, contrary to the boy's own liking. He would have much preferred being a complete mystery at this stage in the exams. It was far more advantageous. But as soon as he'd realized Ino was in possible danger, there'd been no time to think. His body had reacted on its own in an effort to protect the girl. Why? Why? His own voice echoes the question in his head. Why had he reacted that way? It would have been much more like him to sit back and entertain himself with watching the two groups fight, while collecting intel. That's probably what he was going to do anyway, after making sure Ino was safe. He attempts to let his mind drift from the question, but it gives him no reprieve. The idea of not being fully aware or understanding of his own actions leaves a bad taste in the blonde's mouth. He frowns to himself at the notion and silently shakes his head, this time attempting more forcefully to rid himself of the thought. Ino is a teammate. Her presence is vital to the team's progression through the exams. Thus, protecting her was absolutely necessary. If anything had happened to her, it would have been detrimental to the team's hopes of success in the exams. In the heat of the moment of that skirmish, his logic had seemed like instinct. But that's all it was. Logic. Yes, that was why he had reacted so suddenly to protect her. With Ibiki. All right, the time has come for the 10th question to be given, Ibiki announces. The exam participants looking in almost palpable anticipation, the Jonin smirking at this. But first, you will each be given the opportunity to decide whether or not you wish to answer this question, he continues, earning a number of raised eyebrows and confused expressions in reaction. Please note 2 rules in relation to this question. First, Participants who choose not to attempt the 10th question will automatically forfeit all points and be disqualified along with their teammates. And secondly, those who answer the 10th question incorrectly will also automatically forfeit all points, and as well as failing the exam, will be barred from ever competing in the Chunin exams again, Ibiki announces. Confusion morphs into a mixture of disbelief, shock, and outrage. Shouts and protests fill the venue, a number of participants rising from their seats. With Naruto, he stays seated as the room fills with outbursts and protests, sitting back and waiting for the noise to die down so he can take the 10th question. Quitting when failure isn't certain is foolish to him in any circumstance. In any event, the blonde doesn't for a split second believe the proctor's announcement. Silence. I'll fail anyone who refuses to cooperate immediately, Ibiki warns sternly, the protesting genin begrudgingly silencing themselves and taking their seats. Those who do not wish to take the 10th question, raise your hands. Silence fills the venue for a few moments. Murmurs are audible as some genin slowly raise their hands, and more as the minutes pass. Chunin exam proctors approach the genin, requesting their team numbers and calling out to the teammates of those who forfeit to leave the venue with their squad mates. Many wipe tears from their eyes, while others curse one another, looking on the verge of exchanging fists as they leave the room. Naruto watches on nonchalantly, arms crossed. He doesn't expect either of his teammates to quit, but can't be certain they'll all find the answer either. He turns his head, and an eyebrow rises as he sees the hand of the girl next to him rise. With "Ino, damn it," the Yamanaka curses to herself. She glances down to see her own hands shaking and looks around to see other genin leaving the room. She watches on as hands rise, hearts break, and friendships end. She swallows the lump in her throat and closes her eyes, almost pleading to whatever supernatural force she can. With Satsuki leans forward, gazing intensely at the exam proctor, jaw clenched in anticipation. Her eyes dart occasionally at those that stand up and leave. With Yayoi's hand shakily rises, all participants remaining in the room seated, turning their heads and some gasping, recognizing the hero Kunoichi. Suddenly her hand balls into a fist and swings down, impacting with her desk as she stands up. "You'll have to try harder than to get me to quit," Yayoi shouts, her voice filling the silent room and earning the attention of all in it. "I don't care what you threaten me with. It doesn't mean anything because I'll never quit," she yells. "Bring on your question already," she yells, her hair swaying from her head in 9 tender-like bunches. Ibiki's eyebrows rise in surprise for a moment at the outburst before a small smile, accompanied by a chuckle, graces his lips. "Seems the apple doesn't fall far from the tree at all," he muses. Naruto glances around the room to see expressions of concern and fear shift with hope anew. He looks back up at the blonde girl, scoffing to himself. Does she insist on galvanizing the competition? A few silent moments pass once again before the jonin speaks. "Very well then," Ibiki speaks. "You all pass," he utters, to the silent shock of the genin. "We pass." Yayoi repeats in confusion, but our exams haven't even been marked. "The written exams are a deke," Ibiki responds. "The first round of the exams was presented as a written exam, but rather than testing knowledge, this was a test of 2 skills you'll require in abundance as ninja. The first, your intelligence-gathering skills. The first 9 questions were based on ninja theory beyond the level of even Chunin for the purpose of forcing each of you to use your skills to gather information, all the while maintaining stealth, as you will have to on active duty. Those who were caught cheating for the maximum number of permitted offenses prove they're not capable of achieving this to the level required to be a Chunin," Ibiki explains. "And the second, your resilience. This was tested by the 10th question. As shinobi, you will encounter situations in which the circumstances are unfavorably weighed against you. To remain resilient in those situations, never compromising one's comrades while giving all for the mission, is a quality essential to being a Chunin. Those who forfeited prove they don't possess that quality." He finishes glancing at Yayoi, who slowly begins to smile, finally coming to believe the scarred jonin. "That's it then. You're all to wait here until the proctor for the SD dash. Ibiki isn't allowed to finish as the room erupts into raucous celebration as many genin joyfully cheer their advancement into the next round of the exams. The first exam wasn't half bad. The blonde boy muses to himself. He is hoping for some combat in the next one, though. He rolls his shoulders in anticipation. Yayoi turns her head to see Mito and Menma making their way towards her. The three gather, embracing one another and laughing. Yayoi turns her head to see him still seated, not sparing them a glance, and the smile leaves her face for a moment. It had been her desperation to make him acknowledge her and see her strength that had fueled her to stand up. A small smile forms on her face again as she gazes at him a bit longer before turning her head back to Mito and Menma. Like she said, she won't give up. Not until she's someone even he has to be proud of. Ibiki stands at the front of the raucous room, a deadpan expression on his face. All the fear he had inspired a few moments ago is suddenly gone. And worse, there are still 84 participants in the exam. Is he losing his touch? He glances among the joyous genin and sees 3 of the fort's children embracing one another. He sees the blonde one among the 3 and smirks. If there is a reason for the high number of participants who passed, it's probably her. He sees her turn her head to lay her eyes on something for a few moments while embracing her siblings. Ibiki follows her line of sight to once again see the blonde boy in black, the fort's firstborn, sitting not too far away, arms crossed, sporting an expressionless look and paying his siblings as much attention as a stranger would. The scarred jonin raises an eyebrow and frowns in thought as he notes, once again, the blonde's cold, deep gaze. His train of thought grinds to a halt as the sound of the window shattering silences the celebratory noise, while smoke fills the front of the class. Now's no time to celebrate, brats, a voice calls out from behind the curtain of smoke, which then lifts to reveal a young woman of slender frame, with light brown eyes and violet hair, tied in a spiky ponytail. She wears a fitted mesh bodysuit from neck to thigh and a dark orange miniskirt beneath a tan overcoat, a banner tied to 2 kunai flutters behind her, reading the sexy and single Anko Mitarashi. You've still got me to worry about. I'm Anko Mitarashi, proctor for the second round of the Chunin exams. She introduces herself. Naruto watches the newcomer's entrance, listens to her introduction, reads the banner behind her, and sighs to himself. Another clown, great. She glances around the room before turning her head to Ibiki, who looks back at her. Deadpan expression still in place, unimpressed by her grand entrance. Why are there so many? How many brats did you pass? She asks her colleague, eyebrow raised. 84, he responds simply, the purple-haired ninja, placing her hand to her chest in a gesture of mock shock. 84? Oh my, you all right there, old-timer? Need a seat? Maybe some water, she teases, the jonin gazing back at her with an unimpressed frown. Don't worry. I'll remind you how it's done. At best, there'll only be 20 of these brats left when I'm through with them. Anko smiles deviously, turning to the genin, some of whom stiffen in fear at her words. Right. The venue for your next exam is Training Ground 44, located nearby. Straight in that direction, she says, pointing in the direction of her entrance. We're to rendezvous there in 5. Be prompt or you will be failed, she declares, before turning to Ibiki, smiling cheekily and disappearing in a burst of smoke. Ibiki shakes his head and leaves, saying no more. Naruto stands as the room begins to empty, turning to see Satsuki approach him, Ino not far behind. They begin to make their way toward the exit as Ino joins them. So, how'd you do it? Satsuki asks him, the blonde raising an eyebrow at the vague question. Do what? He responds. Your shadow clone. How'd you manage to relay the information it got from Mito's paper? She elaborates, Naruto's eyebrows rising slightly in realization. A glimmer of a smirk appears on the boy's face for a second as he recalls Satsuki activating her Sharingan earlier during the skirmish with those sound ninja. She must have been aware of the clone from back then. We're through, you guys. Ino exclaims, putting an arm around both as they continue to walk. Satsuki smiles in acknowledgement at the Yamanaka before looking back at her male teammate, awaiting an answer. Convenient that you mention it, actually. It'll come in handy if the next exam is anything like what I'm expecting, he says, the two kunoichi listening intently. Elsewhere in the village. That's pretty much it, really. The bit's worth going into detail about anyway. Kakashi says, laying his chopsticks to the side, a half-empty plate before him. Fugaku holds his own in hand, busy with his own meal. I do confess a bit of concern. Sasuke's desperation to awaken his own Sharingan may lead him to act rashly. Kakashi continues. Fugaku dangles a bit of fish between chopsticks, holding it before his mouth, speaking before swallowing it. Don't worry about Sasuke. He knows who he has to answer to if he does anything stupid, Fugaku assures, Kakashi chuckling a bit in response. The two sit in silence for a few moments, Kakashi ruminating for a while before deciding he's unable to help himself. So, tell me, Sensei, what do you make of Naruto? Kakashi asks, Fugaku looking up from his plate at the masked ninja, chewing his food slower, a thoughtful expression on his face. The Uchiha picks another mouthful of food off his plate, speaking before placing it in his well, between you and me, he says before chewing, swallowing and looking up at the masked ninja, of all the shinobi I've ever laid eyes on, fought with and against. He has the most latent potential I've ever seen, he says plainly, Kakashi gasping and dropping the chopsticks he's just picked up. The masked ninja gazes at the Uchiha, who continues eating, eyes wide. He waits for a moment for his mentor to say he's joking, and then remembers that the man in front of him, unlike his other teacher, doesn't have a taste for humor. Are you sure about what you've just said, Sensei? Kakashi utters, his tone shifting into a more serious one. You'll see it for yourself, the Uchiha clan head says simply, divulging no more, well aware the younger Jonin is fishing. What exactly Naruto did to earn Kakashi's attention is what he'd like to know. Training Ground 44, I see, Satsuki says, as the members of Team 12 stand together, all the genin who passed the first exam, present in their numbers. Sharing of memories and sensations, she speaks lowly. Is that the secret? Is that how you're so strong? Satsuki questions the blonde with a hint of realization to her voice, Ino leaning in to hear his answer as well. Naruto's face remains blank, betraying nothing. No, he responds, the shadow clone jutsu's an extremely valuable asset, but it's strictly for combat situations or potential combat situations. Abusing it would be counterintuitive, he says simply. Satsuki eyes him up for a moment, catching no sign that he might be lying. That's the troublesome part about his often expressionless demeanor. Though she has gotten better at reading him, it is still difficult. It's a forbidden jutsu, and for a reason, Naruto continues, knowing well what's going through his teammate's mind. With those eyes of hers, she probably already knows how to perform it and potentially some of his other techniques. That's the downside of teaming up with Sharingan wielders. The amount of chakra it requires is considerable, even for Jonin-level ninja. It can't be used by just any shinobi, especially not casually. There are countless cases of shinobi dying of chakra exhaustion due to using it, he says, his teammates gasping in shock. The reason I'm able to use it more liberally is because my chakra reserves are slightly abnormal, he says, his two teammates sweat dropping at his attempt to be discreet. Slightly abnormal? Seriously? Satsuki muses, an eyebrow twitching. Slightly abnormal. Isn't that an understatement? Gosh, does he always have to try to be so mysterious? Ino inwardly responds, mirroring Satsuki with her own eyebrow twitch. With Anko, excuse me, Miss Proctor, I think you misplaced this, a voice says in Anko's ear. It sends shivers down her spine somehow. She curses at herself for nearly gasping. She turns her head away from the brat in front of her to be met with the sight of an abnormally long tongue wrapped around a kunai. The tongue belongs to another genin, it would appear. Anko curses once more. How the fuck did a genin manage to sneak up on her? Thanks, she says, a smile in place while taking back the kunai. Don't ever sneak up on me again. I won't be so kind next time. She utters in a sickly sweet tone that doesn't seem to intimidate the genin at all, who simply smiles back an eerie smile of her own and walks away. Anko turns back to the loudmouth brat to see him standing there, glancing at the departing grass ninja, along with his teammates to Alf. Now, where was I? She says, renting his attention, causing him to step back. Quit it, lady. Focus on your job and start the exam already, Menma huffs, crossing his arms. Anko glances up at the sky to view the position of the sun, noting the brat has a point. As much as she'd love to teach him some manners, it's time to get started. I'll see you later, brat. You're dreaming if you think I'm finished with you, she warns, pointing the kunai at him. The boy responds by sticking out his tongue, Anko frowning, before disappearing in a burst of smoke. What a crazy chick. Am I right, guys? Menma says, while shaking his head. He turns to be met with a pair of fists impacting with his skull. First you try to start a fight with all the other genin. Now you're trying to start a fight with the proctor? What's next? Quit being a clown, Mito reprimands, while Menma nurses the two sizable bumps left by his sisters on his head, a deadpan expression etched across his face. Of all the people to be put on a three-man squad with Team 11 Hizadaru can barely keep the smirk of his face as the sight of the famed forest of death stands before him. This is going to be good, he says inwardly, practically giddy with excitement. Looks like the next exam is going to be combat-based, Sasuke says, the two boys glancing at each other. Hizadaru smirking while Sasuke's face remains in its usual blank expression, though with an excited glint to his eyes. Well, as long as they're not fighting each other, Kaori says to herself. The two are bickering a lot less even if they do still at times butt heads. She admires how, despite this, they can be formidable when tagging together. Be sure to keep an eye out for those sound ninja from earlier, Sasuke warns, glancing at both his teammates, each nodding in response. With Team Guy, I'm absolutely certain of what might be a Kugan showed me, Niji assures, arms crossed, gazing at the ground in deep thought. Most youthful. I simply have to face him now. Lee exclaims, balling a fist, a smile of childish excitement lighting up his face. No way, Lee. Are you crazy? Did you see how fast he moved back before the first exam? Ten reprimands, turning her head to spot the blonde rookie in question in the crowd, conversating with his teammates. Even if you can match or even best his speed, we have no idea what else he's capable of. The kunoichi warns in a harsh whisper. Yes, we do not. But a good way of finding out is to fight him. TH-. Lee counters only to be interrupted. No. Niji says firmly, lifting his head to lock eyes with his male teammate. We'll try to find out more about him later if we can. But for now, we're to avoid him and his team at all costs. The Uchiha and her Kekiai Genkai are one thing, but he, Niji, continues, turning his head to look from afar into those cold, deep, cerulean eyes, could be one of the most dangerous people here. With Anko emits a shrill whistle that captures the collective attention of all genin gathered before the training ground. It echoes throughout the forest behind the fence, sending birds flying. Right, welcome, all of you, to the venue for the second round of the Chunin exams. Training Ground 40 for also known as the Forest of Death. Predators and Prey. Part 1, the blonde's hair blends with the tan grass as he raises his head ever so slightly, laying his cerulean eyes on the object of his attention as it calmly sips from a clear stream. A kunai flies through the air, the boy pushing himself off the grassy ground, releasing the ninja tool, sending it flying towards the antelope. The projectile glides a millimeter under the animal's outstretched neck, embedding itself in the opposite river bank. The animal immediately springs away, splashing water as it springs across the stream to escape its unknown predator. The boy attempts to give chase but can only take a single step before a kunai sails past his head, over the stream and into the rear of the antelope's head, emerging on the other side to embed itself somewhere amongst the grass, the beast dropping to the ground in a silent heap. The boy turns in a huff to glare daggers at his sensei, as he lowers the outstretched hand from which the kunai flew. "Hey, that was my hunt. I had him," he yells angrily, the smile on the man's face as he walks towards Jim only serving to anger him further. "I'm sure you did. How long have you been chasing him again?" he asks playfully, the boy's cheeks turning red in embarrassment, not answering the man's question. The man's smile spreads further across his face as he ruffles the blonde's hair playfully. "You'll get one soon. Don't worry," he assures, "and since he's your prey, you can carry him back up the mountain," Hizadaru says, turning and walking away. "Lousy snowhead," the boy insults, turning away in a huff and walking towards the deceased animal, the man chuckling in response at the familiar insults. He turns his head and watches as the boy walks towards the downed antelope. He'll bag his own pretty soon. His rate of progression is astonishing. He brings his hand up to his mouth, heaving a few coughs. He looks down at the hand to see his palm smeared in red. He quickly bends over, wiping the blood onto the dirt, glancing over at the boy, whose back is still turned to him, standing over the antelope. The pain in his chest is slowly reaching unfamiliar levels. Can't be too long now. Flashback end. The deer drops to the ground as the kunai buries itself in the beast's neck, killing it instantly. A figure dressed in black emerges from the shadows from which the projectile came, walking towards the silent creature slowly. The wind blows, pulling back the hood over the figure's head to reveal a head of blonde hair. The rays of the sun cut through the thick canopy above to shine on the figure as he comes to a stop before the silent animal. Flashback. This is the venue for the second round of the Chunin exams. Training Ground 40, for also known as the Forest of Death, Anko announces, watching on with a gleeful smirk as the cadets stand in silent apprehension. For the second exam, you will be required to fight for survival in the forest for a period of 5 days while attempting to reach the tower in the center. Additionally, each team will be given one of a set of 2 scrolls marked Heaven and Earth and will have to acquire the other to qualify for the next round, by any means necessary, as well as reaching the tower with both scrolls unopened, with all 3 members of their squad present and accounted for. Failure to meet all of these conditions will mean failure of the exam, she finishes. Flashback, and the deer rests atop his shoulders as Naruto makes his way back to the location of his teammates. His expressionless face contorts into a frown as he detects 3 unfamiliar chakra signatures approaching the same location. He curses inwardly. There's no way he'll make it back in time, especially since he has to deal with the 3 who've been watching him first. "Come out and let's get it over with," he says nonchalantly. 3 shinobi bearing hidden stone headbands immediately appear encircling him. All 3 are male. "Yup, no mistake. That's him," one says with a smirk on his face. "Imagine our luck, guys. Forget Chunin. Lord Suchikage will have us promoted to Jonin when he hears about this," another says as the 3 slowly walk around him, encircling him as though he is their prey, to the blonde's silent amusement. "So, you're the Yellow Flash's firstborn, huh?" The first to speak questions. Naruto simply stares back at him. "He asked you a question, kid. Talk," a third demands. The kid's scared. "Lost your tongue, brat," another laughs, the other 2 chuckling in response. "If it'll get you to shut up, my father died a long time ago," he responds plainly, dropping his prey from his shoulders. "Lying won't save you. We know exactly who you are. Fate's put you right into our hands. Try not to make too much of a mess, guys. We still have to take his head and check his body for a scroll after," the stone genin says as the 3 begin to enclose on him, the blonde's demeanor still nonchalant. "With Satsuki and Ino, it's just scary sometimes," the Yamanaka says, moving her head to the side, away from the fire that her and her teammates sit on either side of, beneath a darkening sky. "Realizing how far ahead you guys are of me," she continues in a somber tone, "I can't always going to be the one holding you back," her face shifting into a frown. "Ino," the Uchiha responds, "you're not Dash." She stops speaking as the Yamanaka jumps to her feet with a kunai drawn, the 2 genin turning their heads to see their 3rd teammate emerge from the shadows of the trees, Satsuki all the while remaining seated. "Sorry guys, I couldn't find any Dash. The blonde doesn't finish his sentence as a fist connects firmly with his face, sending him back. He falls back looking up, shocked to see the female genin who had been sitting a split second earlier, standing with the fist that had just met him, outstretched. "What the hell are you doing?" he demands, clutching at his face. "Naruto would never allow me to land a punch on him that easily," Satsuki utters plainly. "He definitely wouldn't go hunting and come back empty-handed either," she says. He looks to the other genin who approaches as well, kunai in hand. He smirks in response. Well, it was worth a shot. The hard way it is then, he speaks, his voice changing completely, and sound akin to a small explosion accompanied by a cloud of smoke is heard. The smoke lifts to reveal 3 hidden range shinobi standing side by side. "Let's have a look at that scroll, shall we?" the hidden range shinobi in the middle says. Satsuki smirks in response, knowing full well that Naruto has the team scroll with him. "Come and take it," she dares. The 3 hidden rain ninja run towards the 2, unleashing a flurry of shuriken. The 2 lead genin strike the projectiles away with their kunai, running to meet the enemy halfway. Satsuki effortlessly ducks underneath a kunai slash to send a fist into the shinobi's stomach, sending him into his teammate behind him. The 2 landing in a pile before melting into water. Meanwhile, Ino's kunai meets with that of the 3rd rain ninja, sending sparks flying. A solid kick to the knee that buckles, it earns a loud cry from him. She slashes her kunai across his chest, the male dissolving into water immediately as well. "All clones, huh?" Ino muses to herself out loud. Daiki curses to himself, watching from the treetops above as his clones are dispatched in seconds. "Damn it. These little bitches can actually fight, huh?" A voice cuts through his thoughts, his eyes widening in shock. "You know, for someone of your level to have the nerve to attack us alone. It's insulting." He turns to be met with a pair of crimson eyes, the left with a single tomo above the pupil, and the right with 2 tomo on either side of the pupil. He can only watch as 2 quick right hands meet his face, sending him flying from the trees, to a vicious landing below that breaks some of his bones. He lays in an unconscious heap as Satsuki jumps from the tree to land in an upright position above him, Ino walking to stand before her, above him. He can't have been alone surly, the Yamanaka says, her eyes darting around. Satsuki looks down at him, offended frown still in place. "I'd like to think no dash." The Uchiha sends a kunai flying past Ino's face, over the now doused fire, put out by the Yamanaka to prevent attracting further attention, towards another emerging shadow. The figure flips out a kunai and effortlessly parries the projectile away despite the large animal atop his shoulders. "Yup, that's Naruto," she says to herself as Ino turns to see their male teammate, yet again walking towards them, a large deer atop his shoulders. "Stop right there," she commands, pointing her kunai at him. The blonde complies, looking as nonchalant as she would expect. "It's him, Ino," Satsuki assures. "Let him give the code first," she insists. Naruto drops the dead animal from his shoulders and reaches into his pockets, Ino slightly stiffening in apprehension, while Satsuki remains relaxed. He produces 2 scrolls in each hand, both marked heaven. "A great team is born from members who give everything for each other instead of for themselves," he quotes. Ino lowering her kunai as he approaches, a smile forming on her face. He comes to stand above the unconscious range shinobi, the 3 now surrounding him. "I see you had no trouble dealing with this one. I happened to run into his teammates on the way back, actually," he informs, the 2 rolling their eyes at his way of putting it. Neither of them had the scroll, which means it's on him. Satsuki searches the ninja, pulling a scroll from his body's suit marked earth. "We actually got both on the first day," Ino says to herself gleefully. Satsuki glances at the boy's hands again. "Where did you get that second heaven scroll?" Satsuki questions. "I ran into some other candidates while I was hunting. I managed to snag it from them," he responds, his teammate's sweat dropping again. "Ugh, there it is, Mr. Mysterious. There's no mistake. It's definitely him," Ino says inwardly. "That's the real Naruto, all right," Satsuki says to herself with a similar deadpan expression in place. "But if our scroll is a heaven scroll and we already have the earth to accompany it, what's the point in having that?" Ino questions. Narrowing the competition, Naruto responds plainly, turning and walking away. If we can ensure one less team is able to advance, that'll immediately increase our own chances in the next round, he responds. He'd killed all 3 of those stone genin, as well as the 2 hidden rain ninja that had been in the vicinity and were teammates to the unconscious one. This location's been compromised. Let's find somewhere else to camp for the night, he says as he grabs the dead animal once again, placing it atop his shoulders with ease. His teammates comply as the 3 jump into the canopy above and leap away, leaving the unconscious and injured rain ninja alone. Satsuki douses the breakfast fire as the members of Team 12 prepare to begin moving once again. Hey, why didn't you wake us up last night? The Uchiha questions her blonde male teammate as he stretches himself. The trio had obviously agreed to take shifts to keep guard over the camp. Naruto had taken the first shift, and what clearly ended up being the only shift. I forgot. In any case, I couldn't sleep anyway, he responds, plainly lying as Ino approaches to join the 2. That's not going to cut it, she says, frowning. You can't do everything by yourself. If one of us is exhausted, it puts us all at risk, she berates. The blonde resists the urge to roll his eyes. He expects her to know by now that his body is not the same as theirs. Well then, thankfully I'm not exhausted, he says, turning and walking away, Satsuki gritting her teeth in frustration, Ino watching on in concern, seeing the Uchiha's expression. Besides, the night went by peacefully, he says, flashback, a hand goes over the hidden grass genin's mouth, his eyes conveying his emotions of horror as he is pinned back against a tree, his teammates only a few feet away, and laying dead alongside one another. A pair of ice-cold cerulean blue eyes cutting through the darkness to meet his. Hand me the scroll, the owner of the eyes orders. The boy complies, quickly pulling it out and handing it over. They'd been taken down by one guy. He didn't even try to call for backup from his sleeping teammates. He wishes they'd never attacked this group, a decision he'll regret for the rest of his life, assuming that's long. His pleas for said life are muffled as a firm chop to the neck knocks him unconscious. Flashback, and another Earth scroll recovered. Another team that won't be advancing. The blonde muses to himself. With Team 11, Kaori watches on in horror as Sasuke rides in agony, clutching at his neck, a black pattern of 3 tomo having appeared where the freak of a grass ninja had just bitten him. Her own body is bruised and bloodied. She looks back at the devil-like female, the upper left side of her face burned away by Sasuke's fire style, to reveal a pale layer of skin beneath, a golden eye with a purple pigmentation around its contour. She knows that I'll be taking this child with me. Her gifts will be of great service to me, the strange man in Jonin attire says as a white snake wraps itself around Kaori's helpless sister, whilst her parents grip her, holding her back, tears flowing from all 3. Gyurin, tears sting the kunoichi's eyes. She thought about this moment, for that it's here. Here she stands helpless. No, not again. I won't be powerless again, the girl emits a loud cry. The grass shinobi raising an eyebrow before his eyes widen as a series of rose-colored crystal shards fly towards him, embedding themselves across his chest and stomach. Kaori watches on in shock, looking down at her own outstretched hands from which the crystals had seemingly materialized. The grass ninja stumbles back in shock before his body suddenly shifts to a brown hue, melting into mud. So, it would seem you're not too different from your sister after all? How delectably interesting that vile voice cuts into her ear once again. She tries to whip herself around, but a firm hand to the neck that causes her knees to buckle stops her, as she drops against the tree branch she was standing on, unconscious. The grass shinobi stands over her for a few seconds before casting his glance over to the unconscious Uchiha only a few feet away, the sight of the tomo pattern on his neck bringing a smile to his face. The smile remains as he seemingly melts into the wood of the tree branch, leaving the incapacitated genin there. With his Zadaru stands before the 2 snake summons that had attacked and separated him from Kaori and Sasuke, both of them laying dead before him. A look of deadly rage mars his face. There are only 2 people in this world who can summon snakes, This had better be the doing of that damned exam proctor. It has to be, because if it isn't... Only one way to find out, he says inwardly as he disappears in a flash of black smoke. With Team 12 Naruto's eyes narrow as his team leaps through the trees, heading for the tower in the center of the forest. Something does not feel right. He just hopes his instincts are wrong for once. How common is that, though? With Anko's body refuses to comply with her will as she remains on her hands and knees, desperately trying to force herself up. His chuckle mocks her, adding salt to the wound of her throbbing neck. She shivers as she feels his hand, ice cold to the touch, to her chin, lifting her face to meet those golden eyes. "Are you jealous?" he questions mockingly. She smirks wryly in response. "No, just amused. You and I both know that when Lord Fourth finds out you set foot back in the village, you're a dead man." The man's face turns blank, Anko silently chuckling at herself, relishing whatever small victory she can have now. Perhaps. Or perhaps not. He is unable to finish his sentence as his head turns to see a cloud of black smoke. From it emerges a boy bearing a leaf headband, which holds back a shock of brown spiky hair. He is dressed in a black tracksuit. "Hey, get the hell out of here, you brat. Go!" Anko yells in horror at the foolish genin, who's unsuspectingly walked in on the scene. The boy stares back at her nonchalantly, not an ounce of fear in his eyes, clearly having no idea just who he is standing in front of. Anko's body suddenly goes limp as a chop to the neck from the pale man sends her forward into an unconscious heap. He turns to face the new arrival, a smile on his face. "Well, look who it is," he says, smirking, Danzo's boy in the flesh. "You've grown," he muses, chuckling. His Zadaru takes a few steps forward to stand closer to the pale man. "Snake," he responds plainly, "just what are you doing back in the village? Did someone tell you the Hokage's dead, or are you just suicidal nowadays?" He jibes sarcastically, a smirk of his own gracing his lips as the pale man's smirk leaves us once again. "Don't answer that, actually." "I don't actually care," the boy continues, raising his hand. "I'm just here to let you know that if you come anywhere near my team again, you won't have to worry about the Fourth, 'cause I'll kill you myself," the brown-haired boy says, his expression turning serious once again, his voice unwavering, showing genuine belief in his own words. A dark chuckle comes from the pale man. "Is that so? If you only ever hear the truth once in your life, then that's it," he assures. How sweet. The spy cares for his teammates. "Do your new little friends know who you really are?" the man questions, walking forwards. His Zadaru remains still, his body completely relaxed, not revealing a shred of fear. The man comes to stand in front of the boy, crouching slightly so that they are face to face, golden eyes meeting brown. "The fact that you were even able to track me down," he muses. Anko had only been able to do so because of the curse mark. Not a single shred of fear, too. "You're the real thing, boy. A true shinobi killer, aren't you? Made in your master's image," he says, the boy giving no response. "You and dear Sasuke will form quite the formidable partnership. Then, of course, there's that other little one, and her Keki-eye Genkai," he continues. His Zadaru's eyes narrow at the man's words, filing the thought away in his mind for later. He turns and walks away, leaving the pale man to continue whatever he was doing with the exam proctor. "You've been warned," he says simply as a cloud of black smoke surrounds him. He pulls a black object out of his jacket as he leaves the scene, a black mask bearing the design of a human skull. Time to send a message. A few rays of sunshine pierce through the treetops to shine down on the pale man as the last bits of black smoke lift to reveal the boy is gone. He turns to take one last look at the unconscious Anko before turning away. He walks towards the trunk of the tree branch he stands on, seemingly melting into it, sinking away into the depths of the forest for his next prey. With Team 11, the female sound shinobi hurriedly grabs both her injured teammates, fleeing the scene quickly before it's too late, leaving the large group of Leaf Ninja. Kaori continues to hold on to Sasuke, the dark chakra that had ensnared him and possessed him now seemingly having receded. "Sasuke! Sasuke! Are you okay? Look at me!" She pleads with concern. The Uchiha attempts to force himself up, the Kunoichi trying to keep him down. The other leave Genin watching on. No, damn it. You're still injured, stupid, she berates. That doesn't matter. He snaps back, lifting his head. The female Genin only seeing genuine fear in his eyes for the second time now. We have to find Team 12. We have to find my sister now. Kaori. Sasuke shouts, desperation etched across his face. With Team 12. Naruto, Sasuke, and Ino continue barreling through the forest towards their destination, leaping from tree branch to tree branch. Suddenly Naruto's eyes widen. The boy whipping out 2 kunai just as a devastating gust of wind collides with them out of nowhere. Naruto, having faced wind-style jutsu far more devastating in comparison, withstands its force, directing his chakra to his feet and attaching himself to a tree branch. His teammates, however, are caught off guard and unprepared, blown away completely by the wind and separated from him. The blonde looks up to see 2 gargantuan snakes rise from the forest below to tower above him. They both spring towards him, his kunai in hand, predators and prey. Part 2 Naruto backflips away as one of the gigantic serpents smashes through the tree branch he was just standing on. The other lunges for him, its mouth open. He weaves a single sign, a clone appearing in front of him. The blonde places his feet on its back, using it to jump and force himself away from the creature as it swallows the clone whole. Just as he lands, a release hand sign in place. The creature is reduced to smithereens, flying in every direction as an enormous explosion comes from within it, leaving it in pieces. The other hisses in pain and confusion, writhing as the force of the blast burns the left side of its head, leaving it blind in one eye. Naruto emerges from the small pillar of smoke that has formed, somersaulting in mid-air above the creature that is unable to react as he swings his arms down, releasing 2 demon windmill shuriken that embed themselves on either side of its head, sending it down to the forest floor where it meets with the ground in a dead heat before seemingly disappearing into thin air under a cloud of smoke that quickly disperses. The boy lands on yet another tree branch, taking a moment to survey the scene. Snake summons. He wants to believe the loud exam proctor is responsible for this, but she isn't allowed to interfere in the exam surly, and thus wouldn't have attacked them with that wind-style jutsu. There's only one other person he's ever heard of who posses a snake summoning contract. He just hopes his suspicions are wrong, and that some genin had somehow managed to get their hands on it. He stares off into the depths of the forest from which the gust of wind came, and then turns his head in the direction his teammates were blown in, a dark frown on his face, slightly shadowing his cold blue eyes. With Satsuki and Ino, the 2 genin tremble and shake like leaves in the wind before the sheer presence of the pale man before them. His tongue leaves his mouth for a moment, extending to inhumane lengths as he licks his lips in a fashion eerily similar to that of the humongous serpent whose head he stands atop. I suppose since dear Sasuke burned my cover away, there's no point in trying to play pretend anymore, the man muses to himself. The grass headband still wrapped around his head as he steps off of the creature's head on to a tree branch. Well, this is rather disappointing, he says, speaking again, sighing to himself in an almost playful manner, brushing the side of the snake's head. The serpent rising in response and moving towards the paralyzed genin. I'll have you know that your brother put up a much better fight than this dear Satsuki, the 2 genin finally emitting a sound, both gasping in response. Suddenly, as the snake closes in on them, a huge fireball seemingly materializes from nowhere, colliding head-on with the snake's head. It hisses in agony as it falls to the forest floor below, Satsuki having thrown her head back and released a projectile of flames from her mouth. Ino turns her head in shock to see her teammate standing next to her. The look of fear that had been on her face a moment ago now completely gone and replaced by one of dark rage, her Sharingan glowing in both eyes. The pale man smiles with dark glee as he bears witness to the sight. Ooh, it seems she awakened hers before him. Interesting, without any hand signs as well. Yes, there's what I came to see. What did you just say about my brother? The Uchiha questions, staring straight into those golden-colored eyes. Dear Sasuke proved quite the decent challenge, all things considered. I'm intrigued to see how you compare to him. The man responds as the Uchiha begins to walk towards him. You dare touch my brother, she says in a low voice, her eyes hooded in shadow for a moment. He's quite the young shinobi. While it will be quite agonizing, I'm confident he'll survive his injuries. Now, of course, we have to see how you fare, the man continues, chuckling darkly to himself. You touch my brother, she speaks again, her head rising to reveal her left eye bearing two tomo instead of the one it bear before. Both eyes now having two tomo, the man inwardly chuckling with dark glee at the sight. If you touch my brother, then this damned exam can wait. Until you're dead, she declares coldly, the pale man continuing to smirk. The smirk disappears as the girl shifts into an apparition before him. The man twisting to stop a kunai aimed for his back with a single hand. An impressive genjutsu, child. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree indeed, he says, gripping her wrist in one hand. Looking into the young kunoichi's eyes to see that indeed every shred of fear has melted from her eyes, rage burning in the red of her Sharingan as she glares darkly at him. The male ducks under a kunai slash, sending the girl back with a punch to the gut. She lunges back at him straight away, throwing the kunai at his face. He tilts his head to the side, dodging it before blocking a punch to the face. Ino watches on as Satsuki, seemingly out of nowhere, shrugs off the palpable fear that had gripped the both of them to face this man head-on. The kunai Satsuki threw embeds itself in the wood right next to her foot as the two exchange a flurry of attacks, engaging one another in taijutsu. Damn it, here you are again. Frozen like a frightened rabbit, she scolds herself, forcing herself to pick the kunai up. She raises it, piercing the flesh of her own thigh. Move, damn it! She reprimands herself, running towards the two as they move about at speeds above her own. The man pushes Satsuki back with a kick. Her more matured eyes are allowing her to read my movements better than Sasuke. How fun! He turns to smack away the wrist that holds Ino's kunai with ease before punching her square in the face. The Yamanaka grabs the man's arm, effectively shrugging the punch off to his silent surprise and amusement, pulling him towards her while crouched low to aim a fist at his stomach. He grabs it, elbowing her in the back of the neck and sending her down onto the ground. He turns to be met with the sight of a fireball, barreling towards him as he feels wire binding his ankles together. Ino grits her teeth as the heat of the fireball grazes her back, sending the enemy over her as he wails in agony. He collides with a tree in the other direction in a ball of flames. Ino jumps to her feet, just as Satsuki whips around to barely block a punch aimed at her face, but just as she prepares to punch back. The pale man reels in shock as a vicious kick meets the side of his face and sends him flying. A real kick that actually hurt. He catches a glimpse of blonde hair as he is sent flying. Shit! It can't bell Satsuki, stands dazed for a moment as Naruto stands before her, leg outstretched. She turns her head to see the pale man collide with another tree before using his chakra to stand upright against it, all the while weaving a series of hand signs. She tenses while Naruto remains relaxed, recognizing their type only for the man to stop halfway through. The man weaves through the signs, preparing his escape only to look up and realize he's mistaken his attacker. He smirks as he sees the almost spitting image of a young Minato standing before him, save for a few differences. These include the completely dark clothing the newcomer bears, the whisker marks on each side of his face, his dark-colored eyebrows, and one of, if not the coldest pair of eyes he's ever seen. The male shinobi smirks as he jumps from one tree branch to another to stand in an upright position, the two kunoichi tensing whilst the boy remains still. Well, one of Minato's litter, huh? You actually hit me. The old saying is proving to be true indeed. He speaks smirking as he recognizes the boy. It's that boy, the one who knows why Lord Forth keeps him around. Don't worry about him. He has no place here. Surely he's bound to be banished sooner or later. The man's tongue leaves his mouth again, dangling from it as his golden eyes narrow on the boy in black. His chakra, it's making my neck hairs stand on end. What's this? The ninja muses looking down at his hand to see it trembling, chuckling to himself as he looks back at the boy, who stares back at him coldly, not showing a shred of fear. What chakra you have there, boy? Dare I say it doesn't feel human, he says, his teammates' eyes darting slightly at the comment. I came for one prize, but why not take a good look at another, he muses. Listen, Naruto says to see his teammates, his eyes still glued to the enemy. I can buy some time, but the both of you need to get out of here now, he says, Satsuki scoffing in derision. There you go again. Mr. Arrive and save the damsels in distress. I'm not going anywhere. This bastard said he hurt my brother. I've got nowhere to be until he's dead. To hell with this exam. The Uchiha responds, keeping her own eyes glued to the pale ninja. Well, there's no way I'm running away while the two of you stay here. Forget it, the Yamanaka adds. Naruto's frown of concentration deepens for a moment. Listen, I said I'd only buy time, didn't I? 3-on-1 or 1-on-1. This isn't a fight we're going to win. He used snake summons to attack us, Naruto says, glancing down at the forest floor to another snake summon, still slowly burning away, at this point mostly ash. That contract once belonged to the Leaf, and only one shinobi in recent history possessed it. He speaks looking ahead as the pale man smirks again, hearing him speak. One of the 3 legendary Sannin, one who betrayed and left the Leaf. Naruto reveals as his teammates gasp in shock. Orochimaru with Sasuke and Kaori, you're sure he's after Satsuki? Kaori questions, the Uchiha showing slight irritation at her question. I'm certain and I'm going after him, he says. Kaori looking deep into his eyes, seeing the stone-hard certainty in them. Well, then I guess I'm coming with you, she says to the Uchiha surprise, grabbing him by the arm and helping him up. You'll have to toughen up and forget about those injuries for a moment, softy, she says in a playful yet serious tone. The members of Team Guy and Team 8, who stand around listening to the conversation, look to one another. Shikamaru, Choji speaks up, Satsuki's in our graduating class. If someone wants to hurt her, we have to do something, he says. The Nara sighs in exasperation. What a drag this is. Their involvement in whatever this is will effectively mean shelving and potentially failing the exam. But they can't just do nothing either. Niji, Lee speaks up, eyes burning with determination. Our devastatingly gorgeous Uchiha comrade is in danger. We must intervene, he adds. No, Niji says plainly, earning shocked gasps from the group. Except for Sasuke, whatever this is, we can't allow ourselves to get dragged into it. We have a mission to complete, and that's the exam, he says simply, turning and walking away. You would allow harm to come to a comrade, knowing it can be prevented. Lee shouts in disbelief and anger. As long as the exam is underway, she's competition. If she's in danger, that's her teammate's problem, he says, Lee balling his fists as he sees Tenten following behind the Hyuga. I don't care if all of you help or none of you do, Sasuke says plainly, I will protect my sister. This stupid exam can go to hell for all I care, he says as his eyes flash a crimson-red color, the mark on his neck glowing for a moment. Kaori shivering at the sight. He turns to the kunoichi. I know where he is, he says to her, touching the mark on his neck once again. I can feel him. Hopefully we can find him before he gets to her, and kill him. Sasuke utters coldly, Kaori noting the change in his onyx eyes. He turns and leaps away, his teammate following, the members of Team 8 doing the same. Lee, let's go. Niji orders, turning to see the boy in green staring at him defiantly. I'm sorry, Niji, but the life of a comrade is in danger. Duty calls, he defies, turning and walking away. Lee, stop messing around. Niji scolds, getting angry. You won't pass without all 3 of us present in any case. Once I'm done saving Satsuki, I'll be right back. If you're not coming, you can wait for me here, he says simply, smiling his trademark smile before leaping away, following the departed group, leaving a torn-looking Tenten and a seething Niji. You damned fool, the Hyuga shouts, begrudgingly following after the group, Tenten right behind him with Kin, Dosu, and Zaku. Kin leaps from one tree branch to the next, Dosu and Zaku in either arm. She just wants to make sure that they get far away enough before stopping. Zaku all the while groaning at the pain in his arms. Damn it. Just what the hell was that? Dosu speaks. Kin curses to herself. She won't admit out loud, but they were lucky to escape with their lives. Now they have to tell Lord Orochimaru they failed. Her train of thought comes to a grinding halt as a kunai embeds itself in a tree branch ahead of her. She quickly spots the explosive tag tied to it and tries to evade it. With splinters and flame fly in every direction as the force of the blast sends her and her teammates flying down to the forest floor, greeted by a harsh landing. Zaku yelling in pain as the injuries to his arms are re-aggravated. Kin quickly gets to her feet, her teammates struggling up, Dosu faring better than Zaku. She watches as a tendril of fire appears out of nowhere, creeping along the ground, forming a large ring of fire around them, climbing up some of the trees to form a tall wall of flames. She clutches her kunai in her hand. Dosu doing the same, Zaku still nursing his arms. A silhouette becomes visible in the ring of flames walking towards the group, two standing ready whilst the third finally gets to his feet. The figure walks through the flames to reveal itself. It appears to be a male dressed in black AMBU gear. A black mask carved in the shape of a human skull conceals his face, a head of brown spiky hair atop his head. He appears to be around the same age as them. You picked the wrong team, little boy. I'm in a bad mood, Zaku growls at the newcomer. The newcomer doesn't respond, continuing to walk towards the three, unsheathing a tanto. The three sound ninja need no further invitation, running towards the newcomer all at once. Dosu swings a punch at the male's face, which he evades effortlessly, his tanto clashing with the boy's kunai. Dosu's smirk from beneath his own mask disappears, replaced by a surprised expression. My melodic arm. What? His train of thought can't continue as a fist to the face sends him back. Kabuto hunches over, clutching at his ears, wincing and coughing as the glass of his rimmed spectacles shatters. The masked attacker proceeds to sidestep a kunai slash from Kin, sending a quick right hand into her face, before sending her flying with a firm kick to the gut. Dosu glances to his male teammate and needs no warning as he jumps out of the way, Zaku raising his arm and emitting a loud cry, forcing himself to endure the pain as a jet of compressed air leaves his hand, barreling towards the attacker. The masked male simply cartwheels out of the way of the attack as it smashes into the ground. Zaku continues blasting the attacker, who continues to easily evade before stepping back behind the curtain of flames. The eyes of the sound ninja dart around as they become aware of a series of tall shadows darting about in the trees above the circle of flames. This bastard is toying with us, Dosu notes with rage. Perceptive of you, a voice responds. He whips around to see what he thought to be his own shadow, actually the masked ninja, pounce on him, burying the tanto in his chest before he's able to react. Dosu, the sound shinobi's teammates cry in horrified unison. Zaku's horror shifts to rage as he raises both his arms, shooting twin jets of compressed air at the attacker. The masked male simply pulls his tanto from the still stunned Dosu before tossing him towards the incoming attack. The result is an explosion that reduces the sound shinobi to pieces, both his teammates crying out in horror. Zaku emits a bloodlust cry attempting to attack again. He clutches at his arms as they reject his attempt. He groans and attempts to yell in pain, but is robbed of his voice as his head rolls from his shoulders, the tanto separating it from his body. Kin watches on in horror as both her teammates die right in front of her, a matter of seconds apart. The masked attacker turns and begins to calmly walk towards her. She weaves through a series of hand signs, her form seemingly multiplying upon the last hand sign. The male stops in his tracks for a moment as suddenly over 40 identical versions of the girl stand before him. He stands still for a few seconds before bursting forward with pace, weaving through the copies. Kin can only look on horrified as before she can react. The tanto is buried in her own chest, the masked attacker standing before her calmly. How? She questions in horror, a small trail of blood leaking from her mouth. A hopeless tactic. Deception might be a mere tool for you, but it's my religion, he responds, speaking only for the second time. He pulls the tanto from her body, watching as the girl falls to the ground in a silent heap. He turns his head, pulling an ear plug from it, surveying the scene for a moment before grabbing the sound Kunoichi's body and dragging her towards the other one and what's left of the third. With Team 12, are you absolutely certain of that? Satsuki questions, her death stare still in place. He's clearly not a genin. Naruto responds, staring ahead at the man, as well, who begins to chuckle once again. The fact that the ninja was able to mask his presence from Naruto's sensory is indication enough of his level for the boy. Now that he feels it up close as well, his chakra is undoubtedly Kage level. So you were able to deduce my identity, and it didn't take you any time at all dealing with my two other friends. You're becoming more and more intriguing by the second boy. I'm interested to see just how similar you are to your father, he says, the blonde's frown deepening for a moment. If you guys aren't leaving, I'm not either, Ino reaffirms. Naruto glances at her, and then at Satsuki, who still hasn't moved, gritting his teeth. Damn it. These two. His train of thought halts as he sees the rogue shinobi walking towards him slowly, giving him his cue to spring. He sprints towards the male, producing two kunai, the kunoichi following behind him. Orochimaru produces his own single kunai, the weapons clashing in a flurry of sparks. He sidesteps a kunai slash from the Uchiha and another from the Yamanaka, sending her flying with a kick. The boy continues to drive at him, aiming a kunai for his throat. He parries this away, opening his mouth. A snake springs from it to wrap around the leg of an incoming Satsuki, swinging and tossing her into the air. She weaves through a series of hand signs as she twists in mid-air. Fire style, fireball jutsu, the Uchiha signature technique, emerges from her mouth, falling from above towards the two male shinobi as they engage one another in a kenjutsu clash. Naruto grabs the wrist of the man to stop a kunai thrust towards his chest, the rogue ninja raising an eyebrow in slight amusement at the boy's impressive strength. Naruto maintains his grip, not letting go as Orochimaru's eyes widen slightly as he hears another just a name called out. Wind style. Wind orb jutsu, an identical version of the boy calls out from not far away, releasing a volley of wind-style orb-shaped projectiles. That jutsu! The fireball from above and wind-style projectiles collide with the snake like ninja and the clone simultaneously, creating a brilliant eruption of blue flame, just as Naruto weaves a single-handed sign. Clone explosion jutsu. The explosion exponentiates as the blue mixes with the white color of the clone exploding, Satsuki landing next to Naruto, as the three members of Team 12 jump back from the combustion, watching on in slight awe of the sight. Satsuki smirks, slightly turning her head to Naruto. Suddenly her eyes widen as they warn her, whipping around to stop an attack. Her body is not fast enough, however, to prevent it. A chop to the neck buckling her knees and sending her onto the floor. Ino turns to gasp in shock, seeing a clone of Naruto stand over an unconscious Satsuki. She turns to lock eyes with him, and as she does, he pounces towards her, her body nowhere near fast enough to react, swiftly swinging a stiff hand to the neck that leaves in an unconscious heap on the floor as well. The clone grabs one kunoichi then the other, tossing them both over his shoulders and turning and springing away without a word. As expected, the rogue shinobi emerges from the shadows of the canopy above, seemingly unscathed, to block his path. He is only able to do so momentarily as he is forced to block a roundhouse kick from the original, giving the clone time to leap away. The male opens his mouth, another snake springing from it, after the clone and his prey. It doesn't get far as a kunai embeds itself in the creature's head, pinning it to a tree branch and killing it immediately. The man frowns for a moment before smirking. While his prey escaping isn't ideal, he supposes this isn't bad either. He can have a close look at this boy, all alone without any interruptions. In any event, he's already marked Sasuke with his curse mark. He watches as the boy lowers his outstretched arm from which the kunai flew, ice-cold cerulean blue eyes meeting dark golden ones. This child, Something tells me I'm going to enjoy this, attempting to save your teammates at your expense. How noble of you. Since you know who I am, how confident are you that you stand even a shred of a chance? Orochimaru asks, amusement dancing in his golden eyes. The boy simply stares back blankly, sighing inwardly to himself. He's probably about to die now, but if he can hold out for a decent amount of time, he can make sure Satsuki and Ino are out of sight. He almost chuckles to himself at the thought. A matter of months ago, he didn't care about anyone. He had continued to convince himself of that fact too. Now here he is about to give his life for other people. It looks like he doesn't know himself as well as he thought after all. It looks like he won't be able to do his sensei justice after all. But at least he can finally join him. Not without a fight, however. This is perfect, actually. Now that nobody's watching, I can stop holding back, the blonde declares, the snake Sannin smirking in response. You don't say? Well then, let's see just what you're made of. Naruto bursts towards the older shinobi, who crosses his arms to block a kick. He pushes the boy back, who ducks under a kick, and swings a right hand that the older shinobi catches. He opens his hand to lock hands with the older shinobi, pulling him towards him while swinging his left fist for his stomach. This fist is also caught. The two locking eyes with another once again before Orochimaru's eyes widen, as a burst of wind-style chakra sends him back. That technique of wind-style use. Where have I seen that before? The shinobi says to himself. He collides with a tree behind him, a flurry of kunai following him. His body seems to take on a sort of elasticity as he evades the kunai, slithering up and around the tree in a manner very much akin to a snake. Naruto isn't far behind, running up the tree as the man reshapes into his original shape. The two engage in another taijutsu clash, dodging punches and kicks from one another, moving from one tree to another. Their fists collide with one another before they jump back from each other, standing on opposite trees and staring one another down. Yes, Orochimaru muses to himself with glee. He's definitely stronger than Sasuke and Satsuki. Tell me, boy, the older shinobi speaks up. Your fighting style undoubtedly looks familiar, but it's absolutely nothing like your father's or mother's. Who exactly trained you? The rogue ninja questions, Naruto simply staring back. I'm sure you're smart enough to figure that out yourself, he responds. He didn't think he'd be doing this, but if there's any hope at all he gets out of this alive, he has to go all out. He leaps from the tree, weaving a snake hand sign, Orochimaru watching on from above as he plummets. As he hits the ground, his hand slams against it, his words registering genuine shock on Orochimaru's face for the first time. With style summoning jutsu, burrowing carnivorous Buddha. The ground rumbles before a gigantic four-sided Venus flytrap rises from the ground. Naruto standing atop its head, rising until both tower over the snake Sannin, who watches on in awe as rays of sunlight pierce through the canopy to shine on the blonde. Impossible, he utters aloud. How can it be? Did Minato? No. That boy is far too weak-minded to consider such measures. Which means... Orochimaru chuckles to himself in a low voice before bursting out into full-on dark laughter, Naruto narrowing his eyes at this. He's found him. The second coming of the god of shinobi and of all people. Orochimaru has found him. Here he is in the flesh. He weaves through his own series of hand signs as the gargantuan plant pounces on him, biting his thumbs and slamming his hands onto the wood he stands on. Summoning jutsu. A burst of smoke immerses him before he jumps away as the plant creature collides with one snake summon, whilst the other attempts to attack it. The creature is considerably larger than both summons, giving them a hard time. Naruto meanwhile leaps off if its head, giving chase to the older shinobi. I came for the Sharingan, he says to himself. A dark grin etched across his face, but I may have found something even better. The heavens are smiling down upon me, he says to himself. Naruto closes in on the snake summoner, two clones in tow, the three pouncing on him at once. One thrusts a kunai at the Sannin's face, but is stopped by a firm hand to the wrist and dispatched with a fist to the face. The second clone is upon him as this happens, glowing a white color before him, as a massive explosion engulfs the ninja. Pieces of flesh and cloth flying in every direction. A burnt serpent falls from the wreckage, landing on a tree branch. Its mouth stretches to unnatural lengths as the snake summoner climbs out unscathed. He looks up to see the boy springing towards him, kunai in hand. He opens his mouth, a blade emerging from his throat to block the boy's kunai and push him back. He lands on his feet as the blade fully emerges from the enemy's mouth, revealed to be a sword, which he places in his right hand as Naruto runs towards him. Orochimaru, in the back of his mind, becomes aware of a whirring sound and a wind seemingly gathering. The boy swings his kunai, attempting to decapitate the Sannin, who ducks under the weapon and cleaves his blade to the boy's midsection. Jumping away as the clone, in now familiar fashion, combusts in a flash of white. The left side of his body, seemingly incinerated, falls away like a snakeskin shed, the man emerging from the shell once again unharmed. He looks up and there he sees it. Naruto stands atop a tree above, his technique primed and ready in his hands, the enemy in mid-air and unable to dodge. He thrusts his hands forward, releasing it with Team Guy, 8 and Team 11. When this is over, it's you and I, Lee. I promise you, Niji vows menacingly, threatening the boy in green for the 100th time. Kaori rolls her eyes, at this point sick to her stomach with the Hyugas moaning. Ugh, is he ever going to shut up? She groans to herself as they leap through the trees. She turns to see Sasuke touching the mark on his neck again, and just about hears him grunt. We're getting CL dash. He cannot finish his sentence, as the group all simultaneously jump down to the forest floor below, dodging a torrent of kunai. They stand in a circle, backs to one another as several cloud shinobi emerge from the shadows surrounding them, attacking in groups based on village affiliation. Pathetic, Niji scoffs. We'll see how pathetic you reckon we are after we take your scrolls and supplies. One of them responds. Are you serious? What a drag. Shikamaru says, a kunai drawn and at the ready. We do not have time for this. The longer we are here, the more peril the gorgeous Satsuki could be facing, Lee adds in his trademark taijutsu stance. Kaori's eyes dart to see Sasuke's head down, eyes shadowed and the mark pulsing between glowing red and black. His eyes snap open, head lifting to reveal 2 tomo in each eye now. Now another member of the large group of cloud shinobi adds walking forward. A blade in hand, why don't we dash, he is cut short as a fist connects with his stomach out of nowhere, sending him into a nearby tree, which he slumps against in an unconscious heap. Sasuke proceeds to dart towards the direction he was originally heading in as chaos breaks out, another cloud shinobi attempting to block his path. He produces a kunai slashing across the male ninja's chest before he is even able to react with his own. Get out of my way, he yells in a menacingly enraged tone as the mark on his neck continues to pulse, oscillating between spreading and retreating to its source on his neck as the violet aura from before faintly glows about him. The Uchiha leaping away, leaving the groups to clash with one another. Sasuke! Kaori calls out in concern, as she sees that chakra threatened to reemerge. She then turns her attention to the cloud shinobi, assisting the rest of the group in combating them. She just hopes he can make it in time. Satsuki, a bloodlust cry rings out from the Uchiha as he tears through the forest at new speeds towards his destination, with Naruto wind style. Godly wind from the mountain, he cries, releasing the ball of wind-style chakra, canoning it towards Orochimaru, who watches on in shock as it bullets towards him. I know that jutsu flashback the gray sky above emits cracks of thunder as the wind sings and howls a haunting symphony. Orochimaru gasps for air on his knees with his Kusanagi blade in hand, using it to support himself, his strength almost completely gone. Hang in there, Jiraiya boy, the male toad sage half pleads and orders next to his female counterpart as Tsunade kneels over him. Green chakra imaging from her hands onto the huge wound in his chest, her 100 healings mark spread across her body. The blood continues to flow from his mouth, his sage mode by now almost completely receded and his eyes threatening to roll back into his head every so often. Orochimaru grits his teeth as his head lifts to see the giant funnel cloud by now so close it towers over them. Its winds compress within with otherworldly control to prevent blowing them away. In a single second, the tornado dissipates, leaving behind a figure who falls from it, landing on the ground just some meters away from them, taking a few steps to stand closer. He is topless, revealing a scarred body that looks as though it is carved out of stone, a pair of black pants on his lower half with the right pant leg missing. A head of completely white hair, tied into a bun, is atop his head with a hidden cloud headband wrapped around it. Despite his hair color, his stubbled face does not look old by any means. Damn it, Tsunade curses, seeing him with her peripheral vision, but unable to take her attention away from Jiraiya. Orochimaru tries to force himself up, but his legs reject his wishes, bringing him back down to his knees, the male shinobi almost cursing out loud. How is this possible? How could one man do this? The three legendary Sannin, he speaks, Jiraiya seemingly somewhat regaining consciousness at the sound of his voice. It's been an honor. Truly, he speaks as the gray sky above is illuminated by flashes of lightning that bathe the surrounding area. But now I'm afraid your time has come to die, he says, raising his right hand towards them in the name of the hidden cloud. And so, we witness the beginning of a new Naruto, one forged in loneliness, but driven by the power of the ancient wood style. His path may be uncertain, but one thing is clear. This version of Naruto is not the same boy who once sought attention from the villagers. He's becoming something far more dangerous. But what will this newfound power cost him? Will his heart remain pure, or will the weight of his past push him toward a darker future? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching part 3 of What If Naruto Was Neglected by His Family and Released with Style. If you enjoyed this twist on the Naruto story, be sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to AnimeT23 for more what if scenarios, and let us know in the comments what you think will happen next in Naruto's journey. Will he remain a hero, or will his power be his undoing? Stay tuned for part 4, where we dive even deeper into the consequences of Naruto's new power. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep watching, and keep imagining the endless possibilities of anime. This is AnimeT23, signing off.